Chapter 1294th Layer Obstacles. Not only were they now in outer space, the stairways no longer existed. The sight before them wasn't just the endless expanse of darkness with clusters of tiny lights in the distance. The stairway had turned completely panned out. It was smoothened and looked more like a path that extended upwards. This would have made things a lot easier, but now one could not even tell where the traps would be situated and if everyone would be affected should a person trigger one. Another issue was there happened to be areas where the pathways were missing. The participants would have to leap towards wherever the sloppy pathways resumed when they reached places like this. Leaping wasn't much of a problem, but doing all of these while trying to fend off the illusionary maniacs with long whitish gown and paper box-covered faces would certainly make things a lot more difficult. These illusionary figures all had massive purplish sides in their possession, and to make things worse, it was impossible to physically touch them, so one could only evade their strikes while they appeared randomly. Occasionally, the broken-off pathways that were laden across the monolith would vanish and reappear after some time. If someone was to leap towards a separate pathway and they vanished at that moment, they would fall straight down to the start of the fourth layer. The second layer happened to be around 100,000 feet in height. With all the mechanisms in place, everyone had obstacles that would make them slower than normal, so starting again was something no one wanted. The group were currently holding their breath as they made their way forward as quickly as they could. At this moment, no group had successfully made it to the fifth layer yet. The second layer had too many obstacles in place. Gustav and the group were successful in crossing about 15,000 feet in just a few minutes, but once they arrived at a broken-off pathway, things started to get tricky. He conjured a vortex and was about to step in when Gustav grabbed his shoulder to pull him back. The pathway 700 feet above where his vortex led to suddenly vanished. Yo, what the hell? E's eyes widened as he noticed this. The group were initially unaware of the vanishing pathways that would appear and reappear randomly. They were not allowed to leap past 700 feet, so they had to wait for the pathway to reappear before getting on it. The pathway above soon reappeared, and everyone turned towards Gustav waiting for his signal. Not yet, Gustav voiced. Out of my way, Earthlings. A group of white-scaled, beastly-looking figures with massive horns approached from behind at full speed. FYI, they all leapt together towards the platform above, which only extended for about 10 feet. They had to leap again towards the next platform, which was further above, but the moment they did, the platform above vanished while they were still in mid-air. HNGGHH. One of them ripped one of his horns from his head, which proceeded to emit a blinding red glow, and stabbed it at the monolith to prevent fall. Tonging. The pointy tip of the horn slammed onto the monolith's smooth surface, but failed to scratch it in the slightest. Talk more of penetrating. It would take your strongest attack to cause a dent in the monolith. It has one of the toughest surfaces in the universe. The system voiced in Gustav's mind. Yeah, I noticed it's pretty dense. Gustav was still astonished even till now. Boyanin. A small ripple of energy burst forth from the monolith's wall and pushed the group further away as they plummeted downwards. Ergrai. The screams soon faded as the group disappeared into the clouds below. Yonda, who was about to speak earlier, swallowed his words. The platform above vanished once more, and Earth participants as well as other groups that witnessed what had just happened waited for a bit. When it reappeared, everyone stared at Gustav once more. Not yet, Gustav stated again. No one tried to question him, and they all just waited. Why are you guys also waiting? Fildhor asked the group behind. We're not trying to end up like those guys, one of them voiced, obviously referring to the group that plummeted to the bottom earlier. These guys. Fildhor had a stiff expression as he didn't want any of the groups following them. After waiting 2 more times for the pathway to vanish and reappear, there were already more than 100 participants behind the Earth group. Now, Gustav yelled while leaping forward. Thuum, the moment he ascended across the air, the others followed in suit. They didn't waste a single second as the pathway below soon turned empty. Yash. They instantly landed on the next platform and leapt once more, approaching the second. FYI, the numbers ascending across the air at quick pace caused the air to whoosh loudly like a whip lashing out. The group soon realized that there were about 10 different platforms separate from each other with 700 feet distances each. Their timing of choosing to jump had to be impeccable, or one of the platforms would vanish even after they had gotten past some, and they would eventually end up at the bottom. Gustav arrived at the 9th platform before everyone as expected, but the moment he did, the 10th platform vanished. The 10th platform would have been the last they would need to leap from before arriving at a consistent pathway that led further ahead without separation, but now it was gone. "Connect!" Gustav yelled as he turned to stretch his hand out. The group grabbed each other's palm immediately as Gustav leapt sideways. "Sprint has been activated," Tuhush. His figure sped across the smooth surface of the monolith walls as the others dangled from him, all holding onto each other. Gustav crossed a distance of 700 feet in an instant, but he could already feel his feet slipping off the extremely smoothened surface. Fly-hi-hi-hi, he swung his right arm forward, causing the entire group to sway upwards while still holding onto each other. Now Gustav was the last person while Angie was at the forefront with their hands still connected to each other. Pa! Angie's feet touched on the surface of the smoothened wall, and now it was her turn. Furhush, a burst of wind spread forth across the vicinity as Angie sped upwards at an extremely bizarre speed, dragging the rest of the group with her. Gustav's feet had already slid off the monolith walls at this point, but due to the hand connection and Angie's speed, he didn't fall off. Angie dragged everyone with her to the next pathway, and they arrived on it in the blink of an eye, leaving the other groups behind to cater for themselves. "Phew, that was intense," E voiced as they peered forward. "I thought we would fall." Teamy and the others also had a look of relief on their faces. "Let's go," Gustav said to everyone, unbothered about the fates of the groups behind them initially. Fortunately, a few of them managed to make it, but the others, not so much. Gustav and the others spent a whole hour scaling 50,000 feet due to the many obstacles along the way. Gustav had to be very calculating to avoid a lot of issues that could send them back, not just to the base of the 4th layer, but to the very start of the monolith. It already happened to some groups. Right now, they were crossing another separate pathway, following after Gustav's lead. Whoosh! The moment Gustav leapt towards the consistent pathway that would lead further ahead without vanishing, a massive purplish scythe appeared before him. Bang! It had been completely unexpected, and Gustav had raised his left arm at the last moment to block the attack, but it was still powerful enough to change his trajectory in midair. Next thing everyone knew, Gustav's body was sweeping towards the right, off the direction to the pathway. "Gustav!" Angie yelled as the illusionary figure responsible for this attack retrieved his massive scythe and swung it towards the others. Wurruth, a vortex suddenly appeared before them and swallowed the whole group. They reappeared on the pathway ahead in the next instant and found Gustav standing up ahead as well. "Thanks, EE," Gustav voiced in appreciation. "I don't think that guy is too happy about this," EE responded while pointing at the illusionary figure with a robe, a paper box-covered face, and massive glowing purplish scythe. The figure turned around and charged towards them swiftly. "No, I don't think he is. Go." The group sped forward in the next instant while Gustav explained to them that it is impossible to physically damage these illusionary beings. They had to do their best to evade them, especially since these beings had very powerful attacks. Follow current novels on Top Novel Fool. Com. Chapter 1291. They had to do their best to evade them, especially since these beings had very powerful attacks. The group steadily made their way upwards as swiftly as they could, occasionally coming into contact with multiple groups. Fortunately, the illusionary figures weren't as quick as most of them. They were successful in avoiding most of their attacks. The only problem with encountering these beings was they could appear at any time and anywhere. With the way they appeared out of the blue, most participants couldn't see their attacks coming. Fortunately, the Earth group had someone like EE on their side, so occasionally he would open vortexes to help anyone that was blasted off the ascending pathways. After crossing another 40,000 feet, which took them around 2 hours, Earth group arrived at the end of the right pathway. Usually those would mean they would just have to leap upwards to arrive at the next detached pathway, but for reasons unknown, there was nothing above. The detached pathways were nowhere to be found, and the monolith continuously extended into the distant space. They met a couple of groups at this edge also waiting, and also spotted other groups stranded on the left pathways. The edge of the left pathways wasn't too far off on the side of the monolith. It looked like they would have intersected a bit further if both pathways didn't end here. Gustav immediately looked upwards. God Eyes has been activated. His sight zoomed into the distance, crossing the golden and smoothened surface of the monolith. 200 feet, 500 feet, 1,000 feet, 1,500 feet, 2,000 feet, 2,300 feet. The moment Gustav's sight zoomed past a distance of 2,300 feet, he spotted a detached golden platform with a bunch of participants standing on it. The Klaxosapes, Gustav murmured as he noticed that the Klaxosapes were being lifted across the monolith by this platform. The platform continued rising till it reached the 3,000 feet mark, and they arrived before a pathway that Gustav suspected led to the bridge between the fourth and fifth layer. It turned out that this ascending platform was one of the only two ways of getting to that height, since flying and leaping there was not allowed. The only other way was if they could climb the monolith, and only a very few groups were capable of climbing the monolith at the moment. Earth participants wasn't one of them. Angie could succeed in running across the monolith's surface to that height if she used her top speed, but since they were moving as a group, she couldn't do that. The surface was too smooth and could even be considered slippery for Gustav to successfully run across it to the required height, except he was as fast as Angie, which wasn't the case. Gustav could see that the platform had began to descend, and upon closer look, there happened to be two golden platforms. Gustav could guess that one platform was supposed to hold participants from the left pathway edge, and the other was supposed to hold participants from the right. The Klaxosapes had made use of both due to their size, since one wouldn't be able to transport them both. While the groups at the edges waited for the platform to descend, Gustav briefed the others about the current predicament. They're aware too, Gustav told the others. Oh, doesn't that mean it would turn into a brawl when it descends? Eldris questioned while staring at the intense expressions on the faces of the groups before them. It will, Gustav answered. At this point, more groups had arrived behind them, and before they knew it, around 300 participants crowded the edge of the pathways. Dash, hey, watch it. You stepped on me. Dash, you watch it, pipsqueak. Dash, I will send you to the bottom of the fourth layer. The air was getting tensed, and the participants aggravated as they began to push one another. About 4 planets here were amongst the top 20, Earth included. These planets were the ones everyone was truly wary about. Zillion, Oxlurk, Orion, and Earth. It's coming, Gustav muttered as he spotted the platform less than 700 feet away as it descended. The group faces instantly turned serious as they leapt forward. Flyei, not so fast, Earthings. The group of Zillions in velvet-like armors, covering their entire figure, also leapt upwards at this moment. We're also here. The upside-down cone-headed Oxlurkics voiced loudly as the holes in their chest glowed brightly. No one was willing to let anyone go before them. Everyone wanted to be the next group to climb the golden platform. Gustav and the others knew they would have fight their way up there, just like the Klaxosapes did as well. Tuwash, I think you should take a look at Snovel. Si Omicron Emro Alpha and Alphas Nu Omicron V Epsilon Elm Vri, a vortex opened up, swallowing all 17 Earth participants in an instant, and they arrived on the descending platform. The Zillion participants in mid-air conjured massive blades and slashed out at the powerful crimson beams shot at them. Orion participants, on the other hand, grabbed the floating fluorescent halo above their heads and swung it forward at the platform. Wei, Si, Fui, the circular glowing weapons streaked across the air, arriving before Earth participants in an instant. Cosmic Finger, Spectrum Bind, Purple Destruction. Yonda, Eldris, and Elevra voiced at the same time, as they immediately took care of 3 of these flying halos. Indrik, on the other hand, conjured a telekinetic barrier that prevented 2 from nearly decapitating EE and Timi, who were a little slower in reacting due to the speed of the halos. You thanks, Indrik. EE let out a sigh of relief as the halo continuously circulated, just a few inches from his face without being able to move further. Gustav, who was at the left edge of the first platform, reached out and grabbed one of before him. Sinking his fingers into the middle of the glowing circular fluorescent weapon, a loud sizzling sound rang out. SS Kriv VL, Planet Klaxosape, versus Gustav Crimson, Planet Earth, Captain Kriv and Gustav had a brief stare-down within this vicinity of destruction as a gigantic spacecraft got blasted down from above. The spacecraft descended towards them, but before it could completely crash, both figures moved. Swayab Gustav's figure turned blurry as he charged at Captain Kriv, who also charged vigorously at him as well. Gustav arched his right arm backwards, while clenching his fist strongly as he arrived before the massive and muscular pointy rock-like being. It was like an ant charging at a grasshopper as both figures arrived before each other, while the spacecraft craft descending was only a couple of feet away from crashing onto them. Gustav swung his clenched fist at Captain Kriv, who also threw his fist downwards at Gustav's minuscule-looking figure. Boom! Both fists collided in the next instant, causing a powerful surge of energy to rip across the vicinity. Bang! The force generated from the collision blasted into the spacecraft descending from above, causing it to shoot in another direction forcefully while parts of it dislodged from one another. Bang! 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 Other scraped items and structures in the vicinity were hit as well as the shockwaves spread across the entire stage while the ground caved and the barrier surrounding the battle stage flickered intensely. From the first clash alone, spectators had their jaws dropping from the physical strength these two displayed. Both figures had slid back upon collision, but immediately charged at each other once more without a moment of rest. Bang! 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 Boom! 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 Ripples repeatedly blasted across the vicinity as Gustav and Captain Kriv clashed an uncountable number of times. Despite Captain Kriv's size, his speed was not lacking as he traded furious blows with Gustav that had turned blurry to the audience. Reinforce the barrier surrounding their stage. Handler 1 instructed one of the handlers around him. But it already has 5 layers of reinforcement, the handler reminded. Just do it. Make it 10. Just as Handler 1 said this, the first layer of the barrier blasted to pieces. Thry, the second layer, which was more powerful, instantly kicked in, protecting the surroundings and other parts of the arena from the impact of these two battles. On the stage, Gustav was constantly pushed back as they traded blows. There was no doubt that Captain Kriv was stronger physically. Each punch to Gustav felt like he was taking on the force of multiple fast-moving moons. "Are you insulting me, Earthling? I told you not to hold back, Yaha," Captain Kriv voiced as he tightened his massive fist furiously and threw a punch forward that was 3 times more powerful than the previous ones. Flyish, dash has been activated. Gustav's figure suddenly blurred as he appeared behind Captain Kriv the moment he swung his fist forward. "Like I said, as you wish," Gustav's voiced as he threw a fist forward from behind with intensity. Captain Kriv only realized he had missed at the last moment, but his defense kicked in subconsciously as his pointy rocky back made rattling sounds as they twisted and connected to each other. Chapter 1292, Yes, Orimon. We can use it now. In the next instant, their transparent skins emitted a dark blue glow as weird markings appeared on their skins. Feather flutter. A burst of wind bursted forth from their figures as the Zionsis charged forward. Flyei, it was like their figures had become as light as wind as they sped across the surface of the monolith. Their figures traveled across its smooth surface with ease as they crossed a very long distance in a few seconds. The other participants in the vicinity had shocked looks as the Zionsis disappeared from view in just a couple of moments. They were now unhindered by the manner in which the monolith was structured while the others had to head for the pathways. Gustav and the others had arrived at the bridge between the 4th and 5th layer at this moment. They once more found themselves walking through a golden path that led to a glowing doorway and a darkened cave-like opening. "Eldris, you're up," Gustav voiced as they reached this area. Eldris? Wouldn't it be better to send someone else?" Matilda questioned from the side. "No, it has to be Eldris this time. He's the only one I trust that is capable of taking care of it," Gustav said with a cryptic tone. Eldris didn't question Gustav's decision and began walking towards the dimly lit, cave-like entrance. "I have no doubt that some groups will get stranded even if they reach here," Gustav stated. "Why though? Don't they just need to sacrifice a teammate?" Teamy questioned. "It's not that simple. It hasn't been since the start. Handler 1 didn't give us the full information," Gustav responded, causing their faces to light up in bafflement. At the moment, Eldris was already walking through a dimly lit pathway within the dark cave-like entrance. Up ahead, he could spot multiple other alien participants, as well as cryogenic-like chambers where the sacrifices were supposed to move into. Eldris arrived before one of the empty cryogenic-like chamber and placed his hand on it. Reddish rays shot forth from a part of the chamber which scanned the entirety of Eldris' figure, and in the next instant, the projection of a blue glowing planet appeared on the chamber's surface. Earth. The surface displayed the words while opening up. Thisht Eldris proceeded to walk in and immediately got strapped as a gas permeated the internal structure of the chamber while it closed up. Eldris soon went into a state of deep sleep and found himself in a different world entirely. Within this world, he was required to get to the heart of Storm where an access panel was located. "It sure is taking longer this time," Yonda voiced. "Give it time. Eldris will get it," Gustav stated with a tone of confidence. They had heard Gustav's explanation of why he had to make use of Eldris now, but Yonda somehow still expected things to be easy. Every bridge where a person had to be sacrificed, there would be challenges the sacrificed participant would have to scale. After scaling the required challenge, the rest of the planetary group would have access to the glowing doorway. Gustav knew about this since the first layer due to Abestos. He had spoken to Abestos through mental connection and knew exactly what he faced there. The reason Gustav knew Eldris would be needed was due to the fact that with every layer, the challenge of the sacrificial lamb got tougher. He didn't trust anyone else with the task since failure would make them get stranded here unless they decided to sacrifice another teammate. At this point, more groups were arriving in this location, and not a single planet had managed to go through even after 30 minutes had gone by. "I think you should take a look at this novel. C Omicron Mro Alpha and Alphas Nu Omicron V Epsilon L Omicron M. If anyone runs out of breath, they are free to drop out of the challenge." Gustav wasn't entirely bothered since he was the only one that needed to get to the peak. Teammates were pretty much only needed for sacrifice, and there were still up to 17 of them here. One group got access in a few and went through the doorway. The frustration on Yonda's face increased after 2 more got access, but at this point the bridge was crowded with nearly 400 participants. "It is done," Gustav voiced while moving forward. The moment his body phased through the doorway, the others followed in suite with expressions of relief. They instantly arrived at the base of the 5th layer and began trotting forward. The 5th layer only had a few differences from the 4th layer, and one of them was the fact that they would have to scale up to 150,000 feet. With obstacles in place, one could tell this would take hours, and Gustav knew there were only a few teammates here who could stay more than 24 hours without taking a single breath. Things were about to get a little sketchy, but the aim was for him to get to the peak, and at the moment he was only 1 step away. "Will there be another bridge where we need to sacrifice another teammate? Who will you choose?" Teamy questioned from the side. "I don't think there'll be another bridge since there is no 6th layer. I believe we just need to cross the 5th layer, and the peak will be right there," Gustav answered. "Still, I feel like things won't be so easy," Teamy responded. "Yeah, there are still a lot of groups before us, and some behind us have the advantage of moving faster, so we still have to pick up the pace," Gustav voiced while leaping off a detached platform. "Yeah, at our pace a lot more participants might surpass us," Teamy stated while leaping forward as well. He conjured a vortex and stepped in while everyone else leapt forward as well. "I could always just take you to the peak at top speed and we'd get there pretty fast," Angie said to Gustav. "True, but then I don't know what to expect yet. I don't want to be taken by surprise." Gustav still wanted to play it safe and arrive at the peak with everyone instead of just himself. They hurried and managed to evade as many obstacles as possible. They were also trying to make sure they were fast enough to avoid clashes from other groups who didn't want to be surpassed, or who wanted to surpass them from behind. Things were getting heated for the groups since this was the last layer of the monolith, and one mistake could make them lose a spot at the peak. Hours went by and Earth's group managed to make it through 100,000 feet after much hurdles. Surpassing a group that had no issues with breathing had been an issue as they conjured attacks without any problems and moved fluidly as opposed to Earth participants. Holding your lungs from inhaling any air was in itself an arduous process, so having to do that while fighting, evading, conjuring attacks, running, and talking just made things a whole lot more difficult. Fortunately, it was still the best evasion weapon they had here, and he promptly worked to make sure most of the teammates weren't blasted off the pathways. As time went by, they began to close in on the peak, which had a blinding glow that was close to the brightness of a star up there. The closer they got, the more blinding the light became. There was no doubt that the monolith ended where the star glow was situated, and the participants moved even more faster this time. Battles became more frequent the higher they ascended, and Earth Group did their best to avoid getting into scuffles, as it was the last thing anyone needed right now. Either ways, the other groups were on edge and had no idea how many groups were before them. Since they couldn't tell if the number of groups before them were up to 200, they showed hostility towards any group they bumped into. Almost everyone behind was trying to blast everyone before them off the pathways to make room for themselves to get ahead. Gustav and the others were very close to the peak at this moment when a loud whooshing sound whisked past them. Gustav had been a little surprised at first, since nobody was supposed to be able to climb up the monolith walls this fast, but before the group whisked past, his perception corrected that thought. This group weren't climbing, they were running up the walls. A feat that he knew only Angie was capable of performing was being done by this group. The Zionsis, Gustav was definitely surprised, but now wasn't the time to pay them any heed. The group was about to resume heading forward when an unexpected change occurred. FYI. Chapter 1293 FYI. One of the figures that sped past them earlier suddenly turned around and charged in their direction. Bang! A kick to the spleen sent Glade crashing off the pathway as one of the Zionsis landed before Teamy. He swiftly conjured a vortex as Glade's body fell off the edge. Her body sank into the vortex before she could fall too far, and she landed back on the pathway after the appearance of the vortex opening. "What is your deal?" Teamy yelled as the one responsible for kicking Glade off charged at him. Suffer just as he did. The 6-feet-tall transparent skinned being crashed his knee into Teamy's face before he could even conjure up an attack. "What the hell?" Fildhor yelled as he charged in the direction of the Zionsi participant, since he was the closest while Teamy slid backwards. "What in the world is Orimon doing?" The Zionsi captain yelled as he noticed his subordinate had left their midst. "The Earthlings are ambushing him." Swywaya. "I'm going to help." Before Captain Alumo could respond to any of these, 6 other subordinates turned around and sped downwards, in the direction of the Earth participants. "I didn't tell." Captain Alumo had a frustrated expression as he looked downwards. Orimon had acted on his own, and now these 5 as well. At this point, Orimon had been surrounded and attacks were coming his way from different directions when 6 other Zionsis arrived on the pathway. Whoosh! The Zionsis conjured a massive tornado with lightning arcs swimming within them in an instant, sending it forth at the Earthlings up ahead. Gustav decided to act at this point, although he couldn't understand why this group that had passed them easily suddenly decided to attack them when his group wasn't in their way. Atomic disintegration has been activated. His entire right arm was instantly coated in a milky glow as he swung his fist forward with intensity. A powerful wave of energy spread forth as his fist blasted through the tornado, causing it to split from the destructiveness of his fist. Bits from the tornado vanished while the rest that had split turned into tornadoes of their own, spinning in the direction of the rest behind. Swyweh, one of the Zionsis, charged forward in a bid to help Orimon, who was already getting tossed around by Teamy's attacks behind. FYI, Gustav's hand suddenly appeared before the Zionsi participant, grabbing his entire face. BLAM. Gustav spun and slammed this Zionsi into the monolith wall by the side, but the moment he did, a shockwave blasted forth from the monolith. Screevive, Gustav and the Zionsi was sent flying over the edge of the ascending pathway, while the other 4 Zionsis behind sped forward to attack the rest of the Earth's participants. Since they were currently way faster than everyone, they immediately got Orimon from their midst while conjuring more attacks. Gustav Yell had called EE's attention to his plummeting figure. Through him, EE focused on conjuring another vortex to help Gustav, while the others dealt with the rest of the Zionsis. "Since you're looking for a beating so bad, they'll give it to you," Teamy voiced as his eyes glowed reddish and his entire body got coated in a layer of red. His nose was currently bleeding due to the sudden unexpected attacks from Orimon, but now he had lost it. Glade also stared forward with a look of anguish as a massive red sickle appeared in her grasp. "Die, bastards!" she yelled while charging forward. Swiwe, at this moment, the captain of the Zionsis landed in their midst. The pathway in between the Earth and Zionsis participant changed form as a massive wall ascended to stop Glade's attack. Bang! "I think you should take a look at Snovel." Comfy's sickle slammed into the wall, causing it to get cleaved in half, but before Glade could attack again, Captain Alumo raised his arms in defeat. "Wait, please," he yelled. The tip of Glade's massive sickle stopped just inches away from making contact with Captain Alumo's neck. "You have 5 seconds to dissuade me from ripping you and the others behind you to pieces," Glade stated with a bloodthirsty tone. At this point, the other Zionsis had landed behind their captain as well, and they totaled around 15 in number. "I apologize for my subordinate's outburst. I believe he just attacked in a fit of rage without thinking it through," Captain Alumo voiced with a respectful tone while bowing slightly. "What I done?" Orimon was about to speak when Captain Alumo turned around and punched him in the gut. One of the Zionsis squatted with a look of concern beside him, trying to console him. "Come on, Orimon. You shouldn't have done that," the vice captain berated him. Orimon's face had a look of unfairness on his face as liquid dripped from the side of his mouth due to the pain he was feeling from his gut. "My subordinate is sorry, and he'll make sure to meet proper punishment later," Captain Alumo voiced with an apologetic tone while Orimon remained on his knees, peering forward with a look of anguish. "No, that smug look. I will not allow it this time." He glared at Teamy and Glade ahead, who stared at each other in contemplation. "Please forgive his outburst." "I'm sure he didn't mean it," Captain Alumo voiced once more. I meant it and more," Orimon screamed internally while remaining on his knees. The image of a particular person appeared in his mind, looking completely dried up on a sick bed. Orimon gnashed his teeth together as he looked downwards and then spotted the ring-like trinket on one of his fingers. His face lit up with a devious look as he reached out to touch the trinket, which emitted a faint magenta glow. "Do look past his taunts," Captain Alumo kept pleading. Teamy and Glade turned around to stare at Gustav behind. "It's up to you two to decide if you want to forgive them or not," Gustav stated. He realized the Zionsi participant named Orimon was the same person who kept challenging Teamy and Glade over and over and over again during the Versus Battle Challenge. It was now obvious to everyone that this participant bore a grudge against both of them, which was why he just attacked out of the blue, but Gustav decided to leave the decision-making about the current predicament to Teamy and Glade. They were the major ones affected after all. There was no doubt that Planet Zionsi was no match for them, so if Teamy and Glade were to decide on dealing with them, Gustav would render support. Glade and Teamy stared at each other once more in contemplation before Teamy decided to speak. "Well, if you can just tell that." Before Teamy could complete his sentence, an incredibly bright magenta glow burst forth from behind. Everyone's eyes widened, but it was too late. A massive, blazing magenta-colored spear had appeared a few centimeters away from Teamy's chest. It came with a powerful and unfathomable burst of energy that sent a charge across the premises, blasting every single participant within range off the pathway, except for its target Teamy and the figure beside him, Glade. The dangerous outburst of residual energy spread forth across a wide range on this area of the monolith, hitting everyone squarely and forcing them off. It was a power like no other, unexpected, tremendous, and seemingly beyond what any ISOP participant was capable of. In that split second where everyone was sent flying and the massive spear inches away from Teamy's chest, that power. "Teamy will die." Gustav's figure, which was also sent flying across the air, turned into a streak of lightning. Thrashaz, he materialized before Teamy and the spear, pushing Teamy backwards with his right hand as the spear drove into his chest vigorously. 3 Eve. Kairarhe. A blood-curdling scream that caused the entire vicinity to tremble immensely escaped Gustav's lips as he fell to his knees. He grabbed the blazing magenta-colored spear, which kept spinning and forcibly pushing forward to drill further into his chest. The burning sensation that permeated his chest caused his body to tremble from the intensity of the pain. He could feel it from the moment this spear tore through his chest. He was gone. His internal structure was getting flamed from the inside out. He could feel his strength draining and his organs getting snuffed out. The system's voice in his head was barely audible at this point. Unable to activate regeneration. Unable to activate regeneration. Unable to activate regeneration. Warning bells were not only ringing in his head, but notifications also popping up in his line of sight, which he could barely see at this point since his vision was fading. Timmy slowly got up behind after getting pushed away and wanted to approach Gustav alongside Glade when a loud laughter rippled across the vicinity. Ha ha ha, you cannot save him. So long as he is the target, the work of the spear is not done. You will be dying for nothing, Earth Captain. Chapter 1294. So I dies. Ha ha ha, you cannot save him. So long as he is the target, the work of the spear is not done. You will be dying for nothing, Earth Captain. It came from Orimon up ahead, who unsurprisingly wasn't blasted away like the others. Gustav had faintly heard his words, and his mouth hung open to say something when the spear suddenly increased more in intensity, emitting brighter flame and drilling further into him. Thriv, at this moment, Gustav lost strength completely as the massive magenta spear tore through his chest, leaving a massive hole within. As the blazing magenta-colored spear pierced through Gustav's chest completely and came out the back, it seemed to have decreased a little in intensity. However, it was still very much alive as it turned to point at its target in midair. Before the light in Gustav's eyes got snuffed out completely, he muttered a few words. Code IR. Glade, who was initially running towards Gustav, paused the moment those words drifted into her ears. Her eyes turned listless as she stood in place for a moment. Protect Timmy at the cost of your life. As these words left Gustav's mouth, he fell forward lifelessly, drowning in the pool of his own blood. 3 Eve. At this same moment, the spear sliced through the air once more, heading in Timmy's direction. Timmy's hand emitted a bright red glow as he pushed his palms forward. Through Yuan, a burst of red energy spread across the vicinity, and in the next moment, the massive magenta spear got trapped in a cocoon of red mass. Timmy groaned as the cocoon struggled to keep the spear within while draining energy from it by causing time to speed up. The cocoon had the power to speed up the time of anything within. It was just like how Timmy could make things age from contact, but this happened to cover a wider range and was more powerful. However, it was taking a lot of bloodline energy from him. Timmy slid backwards as the wind blasting across the place was unable to be hindered. The spear energy was slowly decreasing in intensity from growing old, but Timmy's arms were starting to tremble. KRRRYYYCHHH, KRRRYCHHH, cracks began to appear all over the reddish cocoon when Glade appeared beside Timmy. Without saying a word, she moved to Timmy's back and placed her hands on them. Furuum, Timmy felt energy flow into him from behind as Glade combined her bloodline energy with his. As both their energies mixed, the cracks on the cocoon mended. The time-decaying energy within increased intensely, causing the magenta-colored spear to shrink swiftly. Orimon's eyes widened in disbelief as the spear soon vanished. Impossible. It's supposed to, he muttered with a deranged look. At this point, Timmy and Glade were breathing in and out profusely while the cocoon deactivated. Timmy's arms and legs trembled as he stared at Gustav's corpse up ahead, and then glared at Orimon up ahead with unbridled anger building up from within. You're finished. His voice trembled as his eyes turned dark with hatred. Orimon shivered as he felt the intense bloodlust from Timmy and slowly moved backwards while touching the trinket wrapped around one of his fingers in confusion. All of a sudden, Tuish, a bright magenta light, bursted forth once more. Timmy's eyes widened as the spear reappeared inches away from his chest with the same full vigor as before. Wha, Puchhayi, a figure had appeared before him at the last moment, but the spear stabbed through this person, with the tip pushing halfway out of their back and then proceeded to pierce through Timmy's chest as well. They were both sent flying as they collided with the monolith wall behind, and got hung there by the spear which tipped Momaged to pierce through the monolith's surface. Blurgro. They both spat out blood as their faces displayed an expression of torment. Timmy could feel his innards getting flamed as the blazing magenta-colored spear further drilled into them. Glade. WHYDDU. Timi muttered weakly as he stared at the greenish-skinned female who was merged to him due to the spear. It was Master's order. Glade stuttered as light got snuffed out of her eyes. Timi's eyes were also getting heavy as he stared at Gustav's corpse up ahead. Even after death you still tried to protect me. Tears ran down Timi's face as his life flashed before his eyes. Darkness was slowly setting in for him, but he noticed something that caused his face to brighten a little in the face of death. A twitch, ha ha ha. I got them. 2 for 1. Orimon began laughing with a look of craziness. The blazing magenta-colored spear at this point had been to decrease in intensity since it had successfully met its target. It slowly vanished, causing Timi and Glade to fall from the monolith's wall which they were initially hanging from. Timi! Glade! Loud yells were heard from up behind, and these voices seemed to belong to Earth participants. They had managed to make their way up and sped forward with looks of disbelief and horror. Timi! Timi! Rhea yelled as he knelt before Timi along with a couple others. His hands were soaked in blood as he kept shaking Timi's body. Eldris quickly brought out a pill and pushed it into Timi's mouth. Core. He coughed out the pill instantly along with a mouthful of blood. It's too late, Timi muttered weakly. Meanwhile, Angie was currently standing before Gustav's corpse with listless eyes. It looked like she was in a trance as she stood there. This is a dream, right? Tell me I'm dreaming, Angie slowly said to beside her. Was just as speechless as he stared at the giant hole in Gustav's back and the pool of blood that had gathered around his corpse. It's not. It cannot. Stuttered repeatedly, unable to find words as a deep feeling of regret welled up from within. Vera knelt before Gustav's corpse as well while some of the others stood in between Glade and Gustav's corpses, unable to believe their eyes. How could all 3 of them have met their end from one attack? Fildhor was unable to comprehend how this was even possible. A bone-chilling murderous intent spread across the vicinity as Angie turned around to stare at the transparent-skinned 6-foot figure ahead. You did this, didn't you? Angie's voice was colder than the Arctic as her hair began to float upwards due to the immense bloodline energy emitting from her figure. Uh-oh? I didn't mean to. Orimon seemed to realize the situation he was in and quickly stepped backwards in fear. He was glad to have gotten his revenge for his brother, but now he could see he was in a situation he might never be able to get out from. He's alive. Varys Ois called out from behind, causing Angie to pause. Angie's coldness instantly vanished as she turned around. Gustav's fingers twitched repeatedly, confirming Varys' statement. Angie quickly reached down and turned Gustav over. Gustav's eyelashes, which were also blood-soaked, fluttered a couple of times before they finally sprang open. Angie and everyone's eyes were filled with astonishment and utter confusion. There was no doubt that they couldn't sense any life from Gustav earlier, but all of a sudden he came back to life. Gustav's eyes darted around as vision returned to him. Before he could completely access the current situation, Angie had wrapped her warm hands around his blood-soaked figure. I thought you were gone. Tears slid down her cheeks as she felt the pump of Gustav's heart against her chest. Gustav was unresponsive for a moment as his perception swept across the place. So I died. I see, he muttered as he slowly unfurled Angie's arms around his body and stood to his feet. There was not a hint of relief on Gustav's face as he silently stepped forward amidst the stares of everyone. He passed by Glade's corpse without a look of remorse or sympathy, but paused the moment he arrived before Timi. His physical energy is increasing by the second. The more this battle prolongs, the stronger he will get. Gustav also came to this realization using God Eyes. Zing, a 5-feet-long katana appeared in Gustav's grasp in the next instant, which instantly automatically unsheathed. Electric arcs could be seen swimming across the red blade, as it emitted a certain pressure the moment Gustav touched the hilt. This was the Jiko Hakai katana, and Gustav had decided to make use of it since he wanted to maintain a no-direct contact battle. Gustav gathered energy as he raised the Jiko Hakai katana in a vertical format. The katana's red blade glowed brightly as the electric arcs swimming around it increased in length and intensity. Captain Kriv, who was trying to get up from up ahead, sensed another feeling of danger as he stared forward. Thawing. The entire stage had been lit up in bright red as Gustav placed his second hand on the hilt of the katana before swinging it downwards with great might. Captain Kriv ignored the pain he was feeling and quickly jumped to his feet. Follow current novels on Top Novel Fool. Calm. Chapter 1295. The air of tension and fear that spread across the place. Only one person could be responsible for this. It's not your fault. You did your best. I don't regret following you. It was the best venture of my life. Timmy's voiced weakly while Gustav listened attentively. I certainly would do it again if time was reversed. My only regret is not being able to continue this journey with you all. You guys are family to me. A trail of tear leaked down Timmy's eyes as his blood-soaked hand reached out to grab Gustav. Take my bloodline. I want you to put it to good use. Timmy's voice trailed off after saying this, and his hands fell weakly as he finally let out his last breath. Gustav stared at the massive charred hole in Timmy's chest and then proceeded to touch his corpse. His face was still as expressionless as his fingers made contact with Timmy's blood. Bloodline acquisition has been activated. Calculating host compatibility rate with Crimson Matter Bloodline, 0/100%, 24/100%, 52/100%, 79/1000%. Host compatibility with Crimson Matter is 91%. Does host wish to extract this bloodline? Yes/no. Everyone's gaze remained transfixed on Gustav's position. It seemed like they couldn't get their eyes off him as he remained in place for a few seconds before finally standing to his feet. Bloodline successfully acquired. Gustav moved towards Glade's corpse and performed the same action. Bloodline successfully acquired. Host has acquired 2 halves of a bloodline. Does host wish to merge them? Yes/no. At this moment, Gustav was no longer paying attention to the system notifications popping up by the left corner of his eyes. He slowly turned around as a silent rage began building within him. The monolith, which was a structure of great power and strength, trembled as he stared at Orimon up ahead. Now that you have achieved your objective, Gustav began stepping forward slowly. I hope you're prepared to meet your end in the most gruesome, painstaking way you can ever imagine. The more Gustav spoke, the greater the chill that spread across space. Everyone could feel an immense sense of dread spread across the vicinity that had them frozen in place. Their eyes had widened in fear as a dark and horrifying gloom weighed on their figure. Gustav wasn't facing them directly yet. The fear they felt was indescribable. They could only imagine how Orimon, who was the target of all this negative energy, could feel at the moment. I will grant you a such decorative and merciless end that will make even the devil weep in sympathy. Gustav kept speaking as he slowly stepped forward. The sound of his footsteps were incredibly haunting and sounded extremely loud yet gentle to everyone in the vicinity. Even participants from other groups who were approaching this area had paused in fear because they could all feel it. The fear of death. Orimon's entire body quaked as his transparent skin produced sweat in great number. He couldn't even move an inch. All he could think at this moment was, this is the end. Not a single coherent thought made him feel he could escape things. A veil of darkish red aura was being emitting from Gustav's body at this point. It looked like an ancient demon was awakening as it casted darkness across this already dark part of space. Every single participant on the monolith wondered what was happening at this point, since the monolith's quake was increasing in intensity. Gustav slowly reached out his right hand as he approached Orimon with glowing red eyes. It felt like time was moving slow, but the truth was not much time had passed at all. This moment just happened to be so intense and gut-wrenching that every second felt like 1,000 seconds. Warning. Host heart rate is increasing beyond safely threshold. Warning. Host heart rate is increasing beyond safely threshold. Unable to calm host heart rate. I should stop him. Eldris gulped down saliva as he recalled they could get disqualified for purposely killing another participant. Unfortunately, he was unable to take a step forward just like everyone. Sweat rolled down his back as his knees trembled. Meanwhile, Gustav had arrived before Orimon at this moment and was about to make contact with him. Zurich, all of a sudden Orimon vanished from his line of sight. I think you should take a look at Snovel. Gustav's eyebrows furrowed as he saw his hand grab thin air. He slowly turned to the side. Zrierich. Handlers had appeared all over the monolith in large numbers. One of them stood about 20 feet away from Gustav with Orimon in his grasp. Give him back. A burst of wind spread forth from Gustav's being upon his utterance, causing the handlers' robes to flap furiously. They could feel the pressure Gustav's presence emitted and realized that things could get troublesome even with their arrival. Gustav Crimson, killing a participant knowingly is punishable by disqualification. Performing such an action is akin to the Earth forfeiting Aesop right now. The handler holding onto Orimon's figure voiced with a compelling tone in a bid to resolve things amicably. It doesn't matter. They will die and there is nothing you can do to stop it. Gustav's voice was like a divine mandate, causing even the powerful handlers to tremble slightly. Such hatred-filled eyes. They were starting to doubt they would be able to get across to him. Fyi, Gustav's figure vanished and instantly reappeared before the handler. Bang! A fist drove into the handler's chest, sending him catapulting across space. Everyone's eyes widened as the spotted Orimon in Gustav's grasp. How did he? The handlers were in complete shock as well. Orimon was shivering in complete fear as Gustav held him by the neck like a chicken. Now where was I? Gustav voiced as he held Orimon up. Swoosh! The handlers swooped in immediately, all holding onto different parts of Gustav's body to stop him from taking Orimon's life. Don't do it, Captain Crimson, they voiced while activating their powers to trap Gustav in place. Get off me! A burst of dark reddish energy blasted forth from Gustav's being, crashing heavily into all the handlers in the vicinity and sending them flying. What in the world? I was unable to imprint. One of the handlers muttered with a tone of shock as his body spiraled across space after the hit. Phew whoosh, the handlers were pretty powerful, so they had managed to stabilize their figures after some time and began swooping forward once more. However, Gustav had Orimon in his grasp and could end his life before they got to him. Gustav raised Orimon and stared him deep in the eyes, causing a new wave of fear to spread across his body. No one is going to save you from me, Gustav stated as his hands tightened around Orimon's neck. K. Orimon spluttered continuously while Gustav raised his second hand to perform an action. Swoosh, a trembling figure appeared behind him and held his arm before he could complete his action. Gus, Tav. The hold wasn't what stopped him at this moment. Instead, it was the female voice that had just called out his name. Teamy wouldn't have wanted us to get disqualified. He would have wanted us to win for him. Angie's entire body was trembling and sweaty, but she managed to squeeze out of these words. This is Crimson. 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 They had been completely astonished by this battle. It was way more spectacular and destructive than any other battle they had seen so far. Phew. What would have happened if Handler 1 didn't ask for the reinforcement of the barrier? One of the handlers stared at the destruction with a slight look of relief. 6 layers of barriers had been destroyed. Usually, every stage had only 5, but Handler 1 had asked for this one to be reinforced with 5 extra layers after the battle began. Had this not been the case, one couldn't tell how the entire arena would have been affected. Gustav Crimson, Planet Earth, wins, 1,400 points attained. These two have to be the strongest captains for sure. Captain Kriv is the strongest physically even though he lost. How did Captain Crimson manage to win against that? Captain Crimson is a beast for sure. The spectators discussed about the battle as Gustav moved out of the stage while transforming back into his usual looks. The spectators wondered if any captain would have been able to survive such with Captain Kriv's overpowered state. They couldn't imagine anyone winning, even though they knew a couple of captains were assumed to be ranked on the same level of strength. At the last few minutes of the battle, Gustav had substituted himself with one of his energy siphoning spheres. Since he could conjure an empty energy sphere and make it invisible on command, he placed one quite a distance away and substituted with it when Captain Kriv was about to drive his fist into him. This substitution technically changed the whole scenario since the sphere absorbed the force from Captain Kriv's punch and then detonated at Gustav's command. Chapter 1296. Angie moved to his front and placed his face on her chest while hugging his body completely to hers. "It's not your fault. Don't blame yourself," she uttered words of comfort while rubbing his hair. She could feel wetness on her chest, but she didn't stop. She continuously stroked his hair while also fighting tears that threatened to spill from her eyes. Timmy was one of the most unproblematic people in their circle besides Eldris. The only times he got mad was when any of them got hurt or suffered any type of injustice. It looked like he was never bothered by anything, but everyone knew this was far from the case. Timmy didn't like to act like he cared, yet he was one of the biggest softies amongst them, going as far to volunteer every time someone was needed to keep an eye on Falco since he got injured. Timmy always stood up for the others every situation where he had the chance, and despite coming from a background of wealth, he had never shown any form of pride. Rhea looked like he had taken the biggest hit amongst them all as he remained in a kneeling position before Timmy's corpse. They had known each other since when they were little, and although Rhea would mostly call Gustav his rival, Timmy was the person who emotionally held that position. "Didn't we have a bet on who would be stronger when we reached the age of 22? Rhea's tears fell uncontrollably like raindrops. Why have you chosen to let me win?" Rhea's lips quivered as he muttered. He placed his hand on Rhea's left shoulder without saying a word. They had all taken a hit from this, so they could only comfort each other. "I couldn't even move to stop him." E.'s other fist tightened in remorse as he stood in place briefly. He realized how fear had kept him in place, whereas Angie managed to overcome that and stopped Gustav before things got messy. A feeling of shame washed over him. If his friend lost it due to any unexpected situation, it was his job to always be ready to offer assistance in whatever manner that was needed depending on the situation. He felt he had failed by not being able to overcome the fear of death and dread that encapsulated the vicinity from Gustav's wrath. He had also sworn to be cool and collected even in the worst types of situation, since it was the best way he could render assistance, but he realized he had just failed. He decided to stop berating himself in the meantime, since this wasn't the place for self-reflection. He raised his head and stepped forward in the direction of the handlers. "What is going to happen to him now? He just killed our teammate. How will you, the handlers, punish him?" E questioned in successions with a calm tone. "First, we will investigate to discover if the attack was done with the intent to kill or the death only happened accidentally," one of the handlers answered. E.'s face instantly squeezed up the moment he heard that. "What do you guys mean by accidentally?" He spat. "That Zionci participant attacked with the intention to kill," Matilda yelled from the side as she approached them. "What she said," Sheila voiced as well from the side. "This hasn't been the first death since Aesop began. I believe the Earth is well aware that deaths occur in Aesop. We only meet punishment when the death was orchestrated intentionally. In a case where it is accidental, the team is given a strike. 2 strikes would of course lead to disqualification, but in this case we have to investigate before drawing a conclusion," the handler explained with an apologetic tone. "You can't be serious," Alevera stated with a strong tone. "What is there to investigate?" Fildhor chimed in. "Hey Baldy, are you fucking blind? That bastard obviously did this intentionally." Yonda also yelled as well. Although he wasn't close to Timmy or Glade, they were still his fellow teammates, and he was getting sick of how things were playing out. This participant had grievances with the 2 who lost their lives here today. "We are well aware that this wasn't done accidentally," E said. "Investigations will have to be carried out first. That is just how things are done. If Earth participants have statements concerning the issue, they can visit the board to table them after the Monolith Challenge ends." After saying this, the handlers began to vanish one after the other. "What happens now?" E asked before the last one vanished. "The rest Zioncis get to finish the challenge, but this one comes with us." Zing, after vanishing with Orimon. Everyone had looks of anguish mixed their current mournful expressions. "I think you should take a look at Snovel. Siamacronim, those bastards. How could they ask them to continue?" Almost everyone seemed to have gotten incensed by the handler's approach of the situation. "Those bastards didn't show up till after their deaths. How is any of this fair?" Yonda stated loudly. Indrik watched from the side with an expression of remorse and regret. He stretched out his hand in Gustav's direction, but lowered it in the next instant. "I'm sorry, big brother. This is all my fault," he muttered underneath his breath. "I should have. I could say I did the right thing by not intervening, but that would just be a way of consoling myself. It's all my fault." Indrik stood in place with a sorrowful expression. "Don't blame yourself. There was nothing you could have done," Fusarius voiced in his mind. "You and I are both aware that's false. I could have prevented this. I saw it but still let it happen. He would have lost way more if you intervened, so this was the best course of action. What if I could have prevented everything? Don't be delusional. If you had prevented this and kept preventing the future calamities it wrought, calamities would continue to stack in the future till it reaches a point where you longer have the power to prevent them. When that happens, your brother would lose everything. Don't mess with the fates," Fusarius voiced with a cautioning tone. Indrik let out another sigh as he stared forward at Gustav, who was still in Angie's arms. "Hasn't he suffered enough? I just want to take all his sorrows away." Indrik mumbled as a feeling of powerlessness welled up from within. The Monolith Challenge was still ongoing at this time, and the entire Earth spectators area was in uproar. The Earthlings were not interested in any excuse the handlers had to give and demanded for the Zionsis to be immediately punished by disqualification. The entire arena was extremely noisy at this point, with loud arguments reverberated across it. "I thought you would rip the whole place to bits when Gustav lost his life earlier." Grand Commander Cheyenne was a little surprised even though Gustav came back from the dead. "I knew he wasn't gone. Death is not powerful enough to take that kid away." Miss Amy responded with an unbothered look. "How did he manage come back to life?" Grand Commander Cheyenne and many others had this question in mind, but since they were more concerned about making sure the Zionsis get punished, none of them dwelled on this confusion. Only Miss Amy was aware that Gustav had the reincarnation bloodline all this time, that one belonged to young Joe. Gustav had informed Miss Amy that should he lose his life here in Aesop, she shouldn't interfere. Miss Amy had to promise him that she wouldn't, because Gustav knew how impulsive she could be in a situation that concerned him. She would still not allow any harm to befall Gustav so long as she was watching, but since this was a competition and she didn't want to ruin it for him, she decided to stay put. The handlers had brought back the bodies of Glade and Teamy. Grand Commander Cheyenne went to receive them with a few other officers so proper procedures would be put in place. The entire Earth was currently in a state of mourning after losing 2 young participants with great potential, but Aesop was still ongoing, and they still wished to win. The uproar would not die down, but they were hoping and praying the participants would still have it in them to climb to the top of the monolith and take a spot amongst the 200, or all of this would have been for nothing. Many spectators couldn't believe how Earthlings could be so emotional about losing 2 participants when some of them had lost more than 2 since Aesop began. They didn't understand that Earthlings were very emotional beings. Author's note: please vote for Gustav in the character popularity contest. 7 hours are left before the next preliminary, and he needs to reach 16th place on the ranking. I know it's late, but there will be a mass release if Gustav reaches 16th place. Chapter 1297. They didn't understand that Earthlings were very emotional beings. A lot of time had passed on the monolith, and tons of groups had surpassed Earth participants on the monolith. Many of them used the left pathways to avoid bumping into Earth participants who occupied a part of the pathways for longer than expected. They had felt the dread earlier on that came from Gustav, and decided it wouldn't be sensible to keep going right. At this point, it was starting to look like Earth would fail to reach the peak before all 200 spots were taken. "Let's go," Gustav voiced after some time, and sped forward instantly. None of them were able to get a word in before Gustav sped off. "Try to keep up." His voice trailed off while the others moved at this point. It seemed like Gustav didn't want to move as a group anymore, since he no longer slowed his speed to match with the others. Sprint has been activated. Whoosh, only Angie was able to keep up with Gustav at this point as they both headed for the peak. The rest of the group lagged behind, and some of them now realized just how fast Gustav was. There was no doubt that they had been surpassed by Mamie groups initially, but the moment Angie and Gustav moved, they covered a long distance in very short time. The group understood that Gustav had to get to the peak as soon as possible since they had taken time below. It only took a short time for Gustav and Angie to arrive at the peak of the monolith. However, the moment they did, they met with a bunch of groups up ahead. The peak had an exalted area was the size of an entire stadium. Meanwhile, the whole peak of the monolith covered a radius of around 7,000 feet. It was as large as a couple of streets combined. The exalted area on the peak was where the blinding glow originated from, and it was also where the 200 spots for captains were situated. One would have to walk through the glow to get to one of the spots. However, to get to the exalted area on the peak, cruel. A loud roar reverberated across the peak. Gustav stared at the massive 60 feet tall creatures that were positioned around the exalted area. There were around 20 of them, and no doubt each powerful. These creatures had massive black space helmets covering their heads, so their facial structures weren't visible. However, their bodies were shaped like apes, and they also happened to have 14 dark tentacles strapped to their backs despite their muscular frame. The captains would have to get past them to gain access to the exalted area. At the moment, participants and captains were engaging these creatures in a bid to get an opening. Unfortunately, things weren't easy in the slightest. The creatures were not only large, but their dark tentacles could extend as well, which made it easier for them to cover large distances. Captains would occasionally try to leap over them, so they could land within the exalted area, but such never ended well. Gustav watched a captain get completed wrapped by the dark tentacles and flung off the peak. While almost everyone was tensed, Gustav was getting fired up as he squeezed his fist with a cold glare. "Just what I needed," he muttered while stepping forward. Swooura, an immense pressure radiated from his being, causing the participants around to instantly stare at him with look of confoundment. Gustav leapt forward in the next instant, while Angie followed behind him. Gustav's arm transformed, becoming massive and reddish as he descended from the air. Thwy, Gustav's body twisted and flipped multiple times in midair, dodging the multiple tentacles that shot at him while he descended. "Go down." The surroundings trembled as his powerful fist landed on the heads of one of the creatures. Boom! A loud crash reverberated across the peak of the monolith, sending shockwaves across space that pushed everyone back. The jaws of nearly every participant here dropped as the creature that received the fist slumped heavily to the golden peak. "I think you should take a look at Snovel." Thwya. Gustav didn't get the chance to stabilize himself as tentacles latched onto his figure from directions. His face showed a crazed look as he reached out to grab one of the tentacles and pulled the creature towards him. "I must go offer my condolences. I cannot imagine how he must feel for being unable to protect his subordinate," Stark said to the figures beside him as he stared at the screens. "Family head, I know you're going to say I should stay away from him, but I will not watch him suffer such without at least offering support in form of condolence." "It isn't up for debate," Stark pointed out clearly, causing the figures beside him to keep quiet. "I have spoken with Timmy before, and I find him to be a very warm person." Sigh, what a loss. Even with all that, Gustav still managed to finish the challenge. Stark felt both sympathetic and respectful at the same time. Currently, the Earth spectators' areas was still in shambles. A bittersweet feeling arose within them. Timmy had been lost, but Gustav managed to claim a spot amongst the 200, getting Earth to the next stage. Timmy, 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 Timmy. At first, it was a little chant from one person, but soon other Earthlings began to join in. Timmy, 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 Timmy. Soon it became a fully vibrant chant from Earth's audience. It resonated deep from their hearts as they hailed this fallen participant. Even on Earth, as everyone witnessed Aesop on the big screens, the chants had overtaken the sound of vehicles. Almost every single person chanted Timmy's name. It was like a memorial while the Monolith Challenge had come to an end with the end of his life. Zing, 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 zing. The groups that made it began to appear in the middle of the arena, one after the other. In a bit, all 200 groups that passed had appeared in the arena. Cheers mixed with chatters rang out from the spectators' corners, while Handler 1 moved to address them. Eldris, Abestos, and Shirama, who didn't get to the peak with the others since they were sacrifices, were just hearing about Timmy. Eldris was in disbelief for some time after hearing the full gist of things from He couldn't comprehend how such a thing could have taken place with everyone right there. I should not have been away from them. I should have let someone else been sacrificed. Ildris blamed himself internally, but at the same time he felt he might have still failed to protect Timmy, even if he was present since Gustav also became a victim. It felt like a dream, but unfortunately this was the new reality of things. Timmy was gone, and they would have to continue without him, not for long. Gustav's gaze was laced with absolute coldness as he stated. The Xionsis could feel his gaze of coldness penetrating their skins and instantly felt uncomfortable. They couldn't even stare back and had the urge to sink into the ground upon noticing Gustav's penetrative gaze. Captain Alumo was the most conflicted of the bunch, as he didn't know whether to approach Gustav and apologize for Orimon's actions, or just stay put. The major problem was how the apology would be perceived. If he apologized, he risked putting the Xionsis in a state where he is supposedly admitting that the act was committed intentionally. This could also lead to a disqualification for them, and be thought about how far his group had come since the start. No one thought they would make it this far, and now he had to proceed with decisions in the best interest of his planet. I am sorry, Captain Crimson. I really wish I could admit that it was done intentionally, but I cannot. I cannot jeopardize the progress of my group after they have worked this hard to get here. I will put everything into making sure we are only given a strike and not disqualified. Captain Alumo let out a sigh as he came to a conclusion in his head. Earth participants continued staring daggers at them while waiting for Handler 1's briefing to be concluded. The next challenge will hold in 5 days from now, and the participants shall be split into 4 groups, Handler 1 voiced. Everyone paid more attention as Handler 1 got to this point. These 4 groups will each have 50 planets within under a particular color. Handler 1 went on to explain the 4 groups would be named after colors: red, blue, green, and yellow. When the time came, participants would be given colored vests that represent the groups they fall under. Unfortunately, we're unable to get Gustav to top 16, so no mass release. However, in appreciation to everyone who voted, I'll release 2 chapters tomorrow. Chapter 1298. When the time came, participants would be given colored vests that represent the groups they fall under. Handler 1 went on to add that only 1 out of the 4 groups would win the next challenge, and that 1 group would be the last participants left. Other participants under losing colors would be disqualified. He mentioned a few things more without going into heavy detail before the briefing finally came to an end. The participants were not completely aware of what the next challenge was about, but at the very least Handler 1 had given them a bit of information. The ISOP was truly coming to a finish, since the next challenge was going to be the second to the last before the challenge that would finalize everything. The champions of ISOP would be crowned soon. The next couple of days were fraught with mourning and gloom as the group tried to recuperate after the loss of a loved one. As mentioned previously, the handlers went on to investigate Timmy's death so as to determine if it was done intentionally or accidentally. The MBO leaders let out their complaints and stated that even if it was done accidentally, it was an attack that killed not 2 but 3 of their representatives, Gustav included. They advocated that should the Xionsis be given strikes, they must be given 3, which should also lead to their disqualification. The Xionsis, on the other hand, were also not willing to throw in the towel and claimed it was just a single accidental attack, and their representative didn't think it would be capable of taking the lives of 3 participants in one go. It had turned into a court case of sorts, with either side not willing to back down. The investigation was taking longer than expected, since the handlers claimed they couldn't find a reason for Orimon's sudden spike in strength at that moment. A lot of things weren't adding up, and Gustav was of course not going to let this slide, so he began personal investigations. One thing that had been concluded from the onset was the fact that Oromon was not powerful enough to conjure up such an attack on a regular basis. Sure, the Xionsis were strong since they managed to become top 200, but their strength wasn't close to that of the mixed-blood participants. Earth was currently first place after all. Now, since he wasn't powerful enough, where did the energy come from? Gustav already drew a bunch of speculations, but arriving at a definite answer would require proof. Investigate this ring. I have a feeling it has something to do with his energy buff, Gustav reported to one of the handlers while displaying an holographic image of a trinket with a beast-shaped mouth on its surface and chain-like necklace dangling from the sides. It is our jobs to decide what we deserves to be investigated and what doesn't, Handler 128 stated with slight tone of arrogance. It felt like he was insulted that Gustav thought he had figured out something they hadn't. You seem to be doing a poor job, Gustav stated without a hint of intimidation. This discussion is over. Only come back when you have a statement about things you remember during the incident or proof of your claim. Handler 128 showed Gustav out of their building afterwards. Gustav didn't get mad or triggered in the slightest. Instead, he had an entire outlook on the whole issue. Being unable to take the suggestion of a party involved means either of two things: pride, or he's receiving bribes from the Zionsis. Gustav didn't want to hinge on the latter, but he couldn't entirely put it off. Not all the handlers could be incorrigible. Since proof is needed, I just need to bring back one, Gustav decided while walking away. There was a lot on Gustav's plate at the moment. Falco's transitioning, Timmy's death, and investigating the Indulus Prime. He had moved Indulus Prime aside in the meantime due to Timmy's death, but he would have to make room for that soon enough. He just wanted to make sure Timmy gets the justice he deserved. Internally, Gustav didn't wish to get the Zionsis disqualified. He just wanted to get down to the crux of the matter. The moment he was able to prove it wasn't an accidental murder and the handlers still chose not to disqualify the Zionsis, then he would truly take matters into his own hand. Internally, he wished they wouldn't do the right thing, so he could deal with the Zionsis in the worst way possible. On Falco's situation, Miss Amy had confirmed the answer of the person she contacted and claimed they would arrive on planet Ozius in a few days' time. Gustav headed back to their residential quarters and began making a new string of plans. SJ projected the holographic image of the trinket that was on one of Orimon's fingers when he conjured the spear attack during the confrontation. The color adds up. I just need to find out more information on the source of the jewelry and how it was acquired, Gustav thought while staring at the magenta-colored glow the trinket emitted. Ko. Two knocks on the door brought Gustav out of his reverie. Gustav was already aware of the identity of the person knocking, so he immediately answered. You can come in now. I think you should take a look at Snovel. Siamacronym TSSSHHH, the door slid open and Stark walked in. Hey man, he voiced while moving to sit beside Gustav. Gustav returned the greeting and asked what brought Stark here. Just checking up on you, Stark stated. A much appreciated gesture, but I have my hands full at the moment, Gustav replied while analyzing the holographic image before him. Oh, wait. Stark's eyes squinted as he stared at the holographic projection suspiciously. I recognize this, he stated. Gustav's attention was immediately drawn after hearing that. You do? Where have you seen it prior to this? Gustav questioned with an extremely curious tone. It was that night. Stark's face displayed a reminiscing look as he spoke. Gustav listened attentively with an intrigued expression. The night we went for Axelar, I saw this in the hand of the person sitting across him in the restaurant before we got there, Stark pointed out. Gustav also recalled that night. It was one of the Zionsis, but not a participant if I recall correctly. Most likely one of their higher-ups with authority. Gustav had no issues with his memory. In fact, he remembered that night like it was playing out before him. The only issue was that trinket didn't exist in his memory. This was why he instantly recognized it. Gustav's face contorted as he began to piece things together. Axelar was a famous collector after all. There was no doubt he had a lot of powerful items in his collection, and this was one of them. That night, I should have truly gone after that person. Gustav's eyes shone with realization. What does this mean? Why are you concerned about that piece of jewelry? Stark questioned. Because that piece of jewelry is most likely responsible for the death of my friend. And to think that night, Gustav's face was immediately laced with an expression of regret. He recalled wanting to go after the person who he was unaware at the time had purchased this trinket. Stark had told him it was unnecessary since it was just a customer, and he felt that made sense too. If he had chosen to listen to his instincts and do so, maybe, just maybe Timmy would still be alive now. How could that, are you sure? Stark asked. There's only one way to properly confirm that this. Axelar needs to tell me the function of that jewelry and why the Zionsi higher-up purchased it, Gustav stated. But he is off-planet. Gustav realized this might be more difficult to clear up with proof than he expected. Silence reigned for a few seconds as Gustav thought of a way out of this. I might be able to contact Axeler, Stark voiced from the side. Are you sure? Gustav's voice was laced with a shimmer of hope. I have the means to do so, but it might take some time. It just depends on if he is in the position to accept dual interdimensional communication or not, Stark explained. Thank you, Stark. Let's try contacting him right away, Gustav voiced. So long as Gustav was able to get a statement from Axeler about selling the trinket and confirming its uses, he could use this against the Xionsis. Without a doubt, these planets were automatically disqualified while the battle challenge went on. Gustav had only fought a single battle today since no one challenged him. After he won the battle, he took note of the fact that he had acquired enough points to challenge a certain opponent without having to worry about them declining. Tomorrow is the day, Gustav muttered underneath his breath as the image of a participant with multiple limbs appeared in his mind. At the end of the day, Handler 1 addressed the entire arena again. Chapter 1299, Ending in Disappointment. Only a day was left before the next major challenge, and Gustav wanted to ruin the Xionsis' chances of partaking, but things weren't currently moving in their favor. Grand Commander Cheyenne was at the forefront of the issue and appeared before the board over 4 times in the course of the last 5 days. The handlers claimed that there still wasn't any proof that the attack was intentional, and Orimon had been repeatedly interrogated, and also claimed it wasn't intentional. The fact that he was unable to amass such power on a regular gave the Xionsis something to hold on to. Grand Commander Cheyenne provided footages of past challenges where Teamy and Glade fought against a couple of them and ended up leaving one of them severely injured. It was brought up to the panel that the severely injured Xionsi participant happened to be the brother of Orimon. It showed that Orimon had every reason to go after the two. Gustav also joined Grand Commander Cheyenne in providing more footages of where Orimon repeatedly tried to challenge Teamy and Glade. Everything added up according to the panel, but the Xionsis admitted that even if this was to be so, Orimon was still incapable of killing 3 people with a single attack. The whole case seemed to be dragging on as the panel still hadn't come to a conclusion. On this day, there was going to be another hearing of sorts for the case, and Gustav had decided to find an alternative since Axeler was taking time to give a feedback. Within the same panel hall Gustav was called to during his first scuffle with the Xionsis, 2 different groups stood to the right and left respectively before the board. We have new evidence to provide on how the murderer Orimon knowingly slaughtered 2 of our own. An MBO officer voiced from the left. Chatter, chatter, chatter. The Xionsis by the right tried to voice out their displeasure at Orimon's labeling, but got shut down by one of the board members. Silence. We shall let the earth display their new evidence. The floor is yours. Gustav stepped forward with a translucent, smooth-surfaced circular item which floated in mid-air beside him. SJ, project the footages, Gustav commanded. SJ proceeded to emit rays of light that formed a holographic projection of footages. Oh, a look of intrigue could be seen on the faces of the board members as they stared at the footages. That is Premier Sherman having a transaction with the collector known as Axeler. The moment Gustav uttered these words, loud gasps could be heard within the panel room. Everyone was aware of who Axeler was, and now they could see Premier Sherman, who was a Xionsi higher-up, having a meal with the galaxy-wide criminal. Do take note of the ring he received from Axeler, Gustav voiced while the footage displayed the full meeting between both of them. Panel leaders, you cannot believe the words of this earthling. That could be on. One of the Xionsis tried to speak, but was cut short by a panel leader. Wait your turn. Let the earthling speak. The Xionsis kept quiet after this, but the visible look of distraught could be spotted on their faces. The more Gustav spoke, the higher the tension in the air increased. The footage of Sherman receiving the trinket played out completely and even displayed Axeler disappearing. Gustav mixed a bit of lie at the end, stating that Miss Amy was onto Axeler, but he managed to escape before he was caught. However, Sherman had already purchased the item he needed. The footage went on to display the moment during the Monolith Challenge, where Orimon had the same trinket around his finger. The trinket emitted a magenta-colored glow just moments before the same colored blazing spear appeared. All of these are proofs that the Xionsis purchased an item that could temporarily boost power just so he would be able to kill my subordinates with a single attack. They did purchase from the most notorious collector wanted across galaxies after all, Gustav explained with a tone of certainty. Of course, feel free to confirm the authenticity of these footages, Gustav added. Panel leaders, do not let this earthling mislead you. That person could have been anyone, and we are unaware of what that ring is. Orimon should be able to explain better, one of the Zionsis voiced while gesturing at Orimon. Orimon shakily stepped forward to speak. Panel leaders. I received that ring from Uncle Sherman without being aware if it meant anything. It was a gift. That is a lie. Why would anyone want to purchase an ordinary jewelry from one of the most known collectors in the world? Grand Commander Cheyenne butted in strongly. That indeed doesn't make any sense. What do you have to say for yourself, Orimon? One of the panel leaders questioned. Panel leaders, surely you are aware that this person doesn't look anything like Axelar. Axelar looks like this. One of the Zionsis went on to display Axelar's true look with an holographic projection. This was an image of the same person Gustav and Stark had seen on that day where Miss Amy abducted Axelar and made him take on his true form. Beautiful like a female, body structured like a male, but happened to be void of gender. As we should all know, no wanted criminal would come to a planet like this with their true form, Gustav voiced from the side. Bring evidence forward that this person before Premier Sherman is Axelar, another one of the Zionsis stated. There was a brief silence, and due to this the Zionsis got more confidence and stated that the Earth was just trying to frame them over a normal piece of jewelry. Even if there is no proof that Axelar was the person who sold that item to Premier Sherman, it is without a doubt that the item is responsible for the murderous attack. The footage proves everything, Grand Commander Cheyenne pointed out. Panel leaders, my subordinate only chose to accept a gift from his uncle. When did that become a sin? There is no evidence that the item was bought from the collector known as Axelar, neither is there any evidence that also would prove that our representative knowingly used that item to kill his fellow rivals. Captain Alumo spoke as well. Even if it is what the Captain of Earth says it still doesn't prove that Orimon activated it intentionally. The young participant WSS completely oblivious, another one of the Zionsis stated. Indeed, as the Zionsis have claimed, the evidence provided here is incomplete, one of the panel leaders stated. The evidence is right there in front of you. Are y'all fucking blind? Gustav voiced with a cold tone. Watch your language, Earthling. One of the panel leaders stated with a strong tone of caution. As things stand, the panel is still unable to decide whether the Zionsis should be completely disqualified or given a strike. However, if they are able to bring forward evidence of the other person in the video being Axelar, the panel will disqualify the Zionsis, another one of the panel leaders stated. Earth tried to say a few things to buttress their point, and the Zionsis also weren't satisfied with the fact that the only thing needed to get them disqualified was proof of that person being Axelar. Both parties were unable to change the decision of the panel, who decided to give Earth more time to gather evidence before they came up with a conclusion. Both sides were currently tense due to the present state of things. We have to make sure they never get their hands on any evidence to proof that it was Axelar, the Zionsis decided as they stepped out. Evidence, I will get that. Gustav was a bit disappointed as to how things turned out today, but he was sure about getting the evidence. Although he was unable to stop the Zionsis from participating in tomorrow's challenge, he would definitely get them disqualified before the coming one after tomorrow. Stark would make sure to get everything prepared for him while he focused on the coming challenge. Even if I am unable to get them disqualified now, should we come into contact with one another? I will make them pay. I will make them wish they had gotten disqualified earlier, Gustav swore internally as he made his way back to the residential quarters. The spectators were excited for the next challenge due to the fact that it was the second to the last, but Gustav was more interested in it to deal with this bunch. At the moment, the issue of Earth's loss had spread, and how they wanted the Zionsis disqualified. Some alien spectators sympathized with them since they lost two potential youngsters in one go, while others felt they were doing too much. The latter mentioned things like, Earth isn't the first to lose representatives, so why are they acting like it's a big deal? Follow current novels on Top Novel Fool. Com. Grab. It had come as a jump scare, as this face was only inches from theirs the moment they turned around, but the figure grabbed them before they could jump back instinctively. The dark being struggled continuously as the figure wrapped their hands around the being's neck. The dark being was unable to release itself no matter how much they tried. This figure was just too strong and soon caused the dark being to pass out very quickly. Minutes later, the dark being clad in black bandage-like clothes could be seen approaching Indulus Prime residential quarters. He arrived before the entrance, and it opened up for him automatically. The moment he stepped in, it was like he had just arrived within a different world. I think you should take a look at this novel. Come cold. Extreme coldness and humidity swept across the air. The ceiling had disappeared. There was no passageway, no walls, no doors, no furnitures or anything else that would be present in a normal participant's residential quarters. Just total darkness. It looked like a world of endless darkness that extended forever. Anyone would get lost in this world, since there was no sense of navigation, but the dark figure continued to stroll through this void world. After what seemed like forever, the dark figure could spot other dark figures similar to himself in the distance. "You're late, Mar. Did you get it done?" Indulus Prime Captain questioned. "Yes, all done," Mar responded after arriving before the group of 19. Good. Hold on. Why can't I sense our connection?" Indulus Prime Captain questioned while moving closer to Mar. Mar stood in place without answering. "Oh, another distant disconnect," Indulus Prime Captain voiced with a tone of understanding. "We have to report our progress to Prime G right now," one of the other Indulus Prime members voiced. "We'll have to fix this connection problem later. Time to report to Prime Vessel G," Captain Iron stated before turning to the side. Everyone gathered around and formed a circle in the next moment. "R2 Oixa Riweskx Chi Vriite Melu," mist emitted from everyone's figure as Captain Iron began chanting with his eyes closed. The environment was already extremely dark, so it would be impossible to see dark mist here, or even the dark figures. However, these figures could see each other clearly along with the mist. After a couple of seconds, Furuum, a pair of deep dark eyes appeared in their midst. Everyone instantly bowed upon the appearance of these large dark eyes. "Prime Vessel G," they voiced with respect, causing their unified voices to echo across this dark space. "How are the preparations going?" A voice boomed across the dark space, radiating with power and vibrance. "All preparations are almost finished. Before the last challenge comes to an end, it will be activated," Captain Iron stated. "And are you sure the outworldly will be in the midst of it?" Prime Vessel G questioned. "Leave that to us, Prime Vessel G," Captain Iron spoke. Everyone else was quiet while Captain Iron made the reports and answered any question Prime Vessel G threw at him. "The offspring. Tell me, have you seen him?" Prime Vessel G inquired. "Not for a long time. I heard something happened to him," Captain Iron answered. "Unbelievable. That means the Lord did it. He truly interfered." Prime Vessel G tone was laced with astonishment and adoration. Prime Vessel G, are you saying?" Captain Iron was just as shocked as he responded. "Yes, that offspring. He must really be fond of. This also means I have a new task for you," Prime Vessel G stated with a tone of seriousness. "Anything you wish," Captain Iron replied. "Bring back." "Sniff, sniff, what is that foul smell I perceive?" Prime Vessel G suddenly paused while his deep dark eyes darted around. "Foul smell?" Prime Vessel G. "I do not K.N." Captain Iron suddenly paused and turned to the side. "I smell it too." Faintly, Captain Iron spoke with a tone of confusion. "That would mean an unwanted presence is in our midst." "Iron, you fool. One of your clones is not a clone." Prime Vessel G voice boomed thunderously as his gaze settled on the Indulus Prime participant that arrived the latest. "Mar? You're not Mar. Who are you?" Captain Iron questioned with a strong tone while staring at the teammate. Cheers. Chatter. Chatter. Cheers. The next morning had arrived, and everyone had gathered in the arena as usual. Loud cheers of excitement rang out from the spectators' area as the participants made their way to the middle of the arena. Thwy Handler 1 appeared on the screens, standing on his usual podium, and began addressing the audience. Today's challenge is called the Medallion. In the next instant, the screens displayed a list of all the planets and then proceeded to start categorizing them. The colors, red, blue, yellow, and green, were tabled out vividly. Chapter 1301. The colors, red, blue, yellow, and green, were tabled out vividly. The computerized system filed the name of planets underneath the different colors, and in the next few seconds, everyone was aware of what colored group they belonged to. "We're amongst the yellows," some Oxlurkix voiced. "We're in the same group." Planet Orion participants moved towards them. Green. "Let's meet up with the others." Why are we in the same group with these weaklings? Damn it, I would have preferred if we were under the red. Sounds of chatters could be heard all around from both participants and spectators. While everyone was either ecstatic or tensed, Earth participants seemed to be distraught. "Any luck?" He asked Elevera, who approached from the other hand. "No, we can't find him anywhere," Elevera responded with an extremely disturbed tone. Swoosh! Angie's figure blazed through the participants and arrived before and Elevera. She shook her head with a look of concern while and Elevera grew even more disturbed. "He didn't come back last night. I know it's not the first time, but he has never been late to a challenge." Angie fidgeted while speaking. "Yeah, this is unlike him, and it's even worse that we don't know his whereabouts," he responded with a sigh. "I have informed Miss Amy. She's searching as well." Ildris approached them while speaking. "For someone as powerful as she is to be unable to find Gustav in an instant, something must be wrong," Matilda intoned. "Guys, what are we going to do?" "The challenge is about to begin," Sheila voiced from the side. At the moment, Handler 1 was giving details on the medallion challenge, while the Earth representatives was missing a person. "Gustav. The medallion challenge is a very simple one." As Handler 1 spoke, a massive golden medallion descended from above. It was the size of a skyscraper with its golden-plated circular surface 5 times the size of a truck. It floated just 2 feet above the ground, emitting a distinct glow from the carvings all across its surface. That is the medallion. The challenge comes to an end after one or more persons from a colored group makes contact with the medallion for a required amount of time without separation. Chatter. 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 Isn't that too simple? So if the required time is 5 minutes and a group manages to touch the medallion without disruption for that period, the challenge would end in 5 minutes. This won't take long at all. A lot of the spectators already bore it in mind that this challenge would be over very quickly without waiting for Handler 1 to finish speaking. Meanwhile, Miss Amy floated above the first disc, scanning the entire planet Ozius with her senses. "Where are you, kid?" she wondered internally while flying around the first disc at very quick pace. Her speed was extremely quick that even the watchtower was unable to capture her frame. She circled the entire first disc, which was 70 times larger than Earth, 10 times in a span of a couple seconds. Miss Amy was still unable to find him. She sped to the next disc, and then the disc after that, to the next disc. It was the same result. She was unable to find Gustav no matter how much she searched. Could he be off the planet? Miss Amy mumbled with a look of disbelief and confusion. She set her senses back on the 9th disc, hoping that Gustav would appear in the arena or something, but unfortunately this wasn't happening. "Come on, kid. You're gonna miss this." Miss Amy was extremely worried as she noticed Handler 1 addressing the participants. "Bear in mind, only one colored group can try capturing the medallion at a time because it only allows one group to make contact and repels them when another group makes contact." The moment Handler 1 revealed this, the place turned even noisier. "He could be in another dimension or something," Fusarius said with uncertainty. "Let's retrace his last steps." Indrik decided before storming off in the middle of Handler 1 briefing. "This is where the vests come in. The colored battle vests, every participant shall be provided with has an built mechanism that absorbs the effects of the repellent force. A participant would still get repelled, but the vest would protect them from any serious harm," Handler 1 revealed calmly. The participants had relaxed expressions after hearing this, but Handler 1 wasn't done yet. "However, the vest only has a limited amount of energy. It can only prevent harm a number of times. When the energy within the colored vest has been depleted, a participant might lose their life if they were to get repelled again." Handler 1's new revelation caused the faces of a lot of participants to pale. The challenge was truly both simple and tricky at the same time. Handler 1 mentioned that energy within the vest could be bought with points. So it seemed planetary groups with a lot of points might be able to purchase vest energy non-stop and remain immune to the harm of getting repelled. Planetary groups felt this was unfair, but then realized that this might be amongst the reasons why 50 planets were under each color. Planetary groups with high points could be found under every color. Every planet under red instantly became glad that they had Earth and Draconids with them, since these two had the highest number of points amongst all planets. They seemed to have better chances here. Meanwhile, the Earth participants were currently discombobulated. Only about 7 of them could be currently found in the arena, while the others had been continuously heading in and out while the briefing was ongoing. The medallion challenge will be beginning soon. All participants are required to wear their battle vests, Handler 1 voiced. For rectangular points, red, blue, yellow, and green appeared in the arena while it expanded. The arena grounds were growing larger and larger, splitting the participants under different colors from one another. They were all required to move towards the various points that displayed their color. The participants headed there and touched the rectangular pillar that extended from the ground. Battle vests appeared on their bodies, displaying the colors they represented. Where are the others? The challenge is about to begin, Yonda voiced with an irritated expression while properly positioning the red vest on his body. Looks like Gustav will be missing this challenge, Shirama said while gesturing at the others who were returning alone. Looks like we'll have to do this under your command, Vice Captain, Abestos stated the moment the others gathered around to get their vests. Eldris had a troubled look of defeat as he let out a sigh and acquired his red vest as well. All right, everyone, let's do our best, Eldris voiced with a focused expression. Let the medallion challenge begin. The Bloodline system is now available on Amazon KDP, Kindle, and paperback version. Reviews will be appreciated. You could also share with a friend of loved one. Thank you all for the continued support. Chapter 1302, Let the Medallion Challenge Begin. Gasp, the entire arena lit up in uproar as an unexpected phenomenon suddenly occurred at Tb's moment. Threeria, what the hell is that? E voiced with a tone of terror. A dark rift had appeared in the sky above the arena, making it seem as though the sky was ripped apart. It brought with it an energy of darkness that vigorously caused the atmosphere to shake. Handler 1 had also paused in confusion as he looked upwards with knitted eyes. Participants and spectators were just as terrified as well as confused. There's someone there, a participant yelled while pointing at the sky. Huh. Everyone looked closely and truly noticed the hands of a person spreading the rift apart from within to make it wider. It seemed as though this person was responsible for the rift and happened to still be tearing the sky open. Is that? Angie's eyes widened as a face stuck through the opening of the rift. Gustav. E and Eldris voiced at the same time as the person proceeded to jump through the rift's opening. The rift in the sky vanished immediately after. FYI, the whooshing wind reverberated across the place as the figure dropped from a height of more than 20,000 feet. Bang! He landed precisely in the midst of the arena, causing a storm of dirt to be dispersed across the air. Fuwoosh, fush, furhush. 3 handlers had already arrived before him the moment he landed with wariness. Chatter, chatter, chatter. Dash, is that Earth's captain? Dash, where was he all this time? Gustav Crimson? One of them voiced with a tone of wariness as the figure, who seemed to have dark corroded markings all over his body, stood in place with his knees slightly crouched and his face lowered. His body emitted a cloud of mist as he slowly raised his face, displaying a menacing-looking glint at the corner of his eyes. Hope I am not too late? Gustav questioned as the dark marks of corrosion all over his body slowly began to fade. Are you okay? One of the handlers questioned. Gustav turned to shoot a glance in the direction of a group of dark beings in blue battle vests. I am fine. The brief stare was so intense that even the participants surrounding the group it was directed at felt chills. So it was him, Captain Iron voiced with a tone of realization. This is bad, Captain, one of the Indulus Prime members said in response. It is, but he cannot do anything to stop what is coming, Captain Iron stated while staring at Gustav, who was getting questioned. The handlers scanned Gustav and even had their medical team check up on him while the challenge was briefly halted. His teammates had surrounded him as well, questioning him about what happened, but Gustav didn't answer anyone and asked only one question. Where is Miss Amy? Fushbang. Miss Amy landed in the arena the next moment and walked towards Gustav. "Ma'am, you're not supposed to be." "Shut up." Miss Amy cut one of the handlers off before they could complete their sentence. "Are you all right, kid?" Miss Amy questioned the moment she arrived before him. "Captain Crimson has less than 1 minute to decide if he will be partaking in this challenge or not." Handler, one voice reverberated across the arena. "There's no time," Gustav said while reaching out to grab Miss Amy's face. Memory transfer has been activated. Before Miss Amy could throw further questions, a plethora of Gustav's memories of the last few hours drifted into her mind. Her expression was one of disbelief and surprise as this lasted for around 20 seconds. "Time up. Earth, are you prepared to partake in this challenge, or will you be forfeiting?" Handler, one voice rang out once more. "We're ready," Gustav answered while Miss Amy nodded and flew out of the arena. "You need to get your vest first," Eldris said while pointing at the red structured pillar on the southeast corner of the arena. "I think you should take a look at Snovel." Swoosh, Gustav's figure vanished and reappeared before the pillar. Upon making contact, a red battle vest appeared on his body. "We're fully ready now." Gustav's voice reverberated heavily across the arena like a battle cry. Does he even know what the challenge is about? Matilda nearly facepalmed after Gustav's yell. "We'll have to brief him," Eldris responded while the handler finally gave the go-ahead for the challenge to begin. "Let the medallion challenge begin." "Medallion challenge? Looks like I missed a whole lot," Gustav voiced as he recalled what happened last night. "That would mean an unwanted presence is in our midst." "Iron, you fool. One of your clones is not a clone." Prime Vessel G voice boomed thunderously as his gaze settled on the Indulus Prime participant that arrived the latest. "Mar? You're not Mar. Who are you?" Captain Iron questioned with a strong tone while staring at the teammate. Bloodlust suddenly covered the entire dark space as the figure they glared at suddenly turned around. Forhus, his figure darted across the dark space with speed as he made a run for it. "After him. Kill him. Kill him." Prime Vessel G commanded. The endless darkness began to twist and turn as they chased after the infiltrator. The infiltrator was none other than Gustav, who had taken the form of one of the Indulus Prime participants. Gustav had been staking the Indulus Prime members for almost 2 weeks without their knowledge. During that time, he had taken note of their activities and properly plotted how he was going to infiltrate their residential quarters. Now he had successfully done so, however, there was something he never saw coming. He had no idea that the Indulus Prime participants were all clones of their captain, Iron. Swoosh, Gustav was very quick, no doubt, but the expanse of darkness was starting to reject him. It was like it had been rewired to gnaw away at his existence so long as he remained within. The Indulus Prime participants were having a hard time catching up despite this being their domain, but with the darkness thrashing at Gustav, he was bound to eventually slow down. The vicinity was becoming corrosive for him, and dark marks began appearing all over his body. "I can't seem to get to the entrance. Did the darkness expand?" Gustav wondered as he kept dashing forward unhindered. Gustav's perception had grown so huge that he was capable of covering the size of the entire Earth with it at his current strength. This was why he was able to navigate this expanse of darkness and find the Indulus Prime members in the first place. However, now that it seemed the darkness was expanding, Gustav was finding it difficult to leave this place. Tuhush, an Indulus Prime member, suddenly materialized from the darkness before him, branding a pair of dark blades. Slash. Gustav bent backwards, dodging the swing of the dark blades which missed his face by only a few inches. His figure swerved to the side and grabbed the Indulus Prime participant from the back of his head. The moment Gustav made contact with his head, a thought appeared in his mind. Mental manipulation has been activated. Siphoning memories. Gustav's eyes gleamed with an expression of confoundment as string of memories streamed into his mind. The figure in his grasp shook repeatedly like someone suffering from epilepsy. In a few moments, this figure dematerialized, turning completely into dark mist. Gustav only managed to get bits from his memory since it was also one of the clones. Still, he had gotten useful information that helped him in piecing things together. Gustav had no time to dwell on everything he had uncovered. He had to keep running. Hours went by and Gustav still hadn't found the exit. It must be daytime already. At this rate, he'll miss the next challenge, Gustav said internally while panting profusely. At this rate, you might even die here. The dark domain is corroding your body faster than your regeneration can keep up, the system voiced in his head. Yeah, huff huff. I noticed, Gustav responded while letting out heavy breaths. You need to get out of this dimension as soon as possible. I know. Finding the exit is becoming impossible. Gustav paused and turned around to scan the vicinity. There was nothing but darkness for thousands of miles. He couldn't use his dimensional bracelet to get out because for some reason, the domain hindered its functionality. If I can't find an exit, then I will create one. Gustav's voice was calm, but it radiated powerfully across the vicinity. His eyes emitted a crimson glow in the midst of the blistering darkness as he returned to his original form. Zing, the Jiko Hakai katana appeared in his grasp, and he suavely raised it while wrapping his second hand around the bottom part of the hilt. His arms transformed, becoming extremely muscular and lengthy as dark scales appeared all over them. Chapter 1303 His arms transformed, becoming extremely muscular and lengthy as dark scales appeared all over them. If you do this, you could appear anywhere on planet Ozius. The system seemed to understand what Gustav had in mind. It doesn't matter so long as I get out. A burst of immense energy radiated from his figure as Gustav gathered all the strength he could muster at this moment. ×2 power boost has been activated. Atomic manipulation has been activated. Slash has been activated. Gustav activated a bunch of skills at the same time, boosting his strength by several levels. If anyone was to witness the chaotic energy swirling across the place, they would be shook to the core. Gustav swung the Jiko Hakai katana forward in the next moment, causing a powerful bolt of energy to slash across the dark dimension. Through the space-time continuum within the dark dimension rippled vigorously as the powerful slash tore a hole through space. A rift had appeared up ahead. The small space between the rift displayed a golden-plated planet with a massive arena in the distance. Gustav quickly sped forward while keeping the katana away and tried stabbing his hands through the rift. It was only small at first, making it difficult for him to jump through, but when Gustav arrived before it, he ripped it open widen with his bare hands. FYI, he jumped through in the next instant. To think not only are the Indulus Prime members clones of their captain, but they also are not the real Indulus Prime species. Gustav FSLT that everything he had discovered in the span of a night had pieced the puzzle ongoing in his mind for over a month. Now that Gustav had uncovered their intentions and what they were hiding, why didn't he say anything or try to get them disqualified the moment he got out of the dark dimension? Simple, Gustav had no time to gather evidence that could be visibly viewed by everyone. If he tried to do that, he would only be forfeiting the current challenge and Indulus Prime would still be able to partake regardless since the challenge wouldn't be put on hold just cause of his words. This was the reason he had passed the information to Miss Amy immediately, which included a bunch of memories from the moment he began investigating them. This way he could participate in the medallion challenge while Miss Amy did the needful to get rid of Indulus Prime while it was ongoing. That's our objective, E voiced. Oh, I see. Gustav voiced in response after E explained everything that the challenge entailed to him. This gave me an idea, Gustav voiced. Oh, you sweet. One that would help us win, right? E asked. A sinister grin appeared on Gustav's face in the next moment as he stared in a particular direction. One that would help us win, right? E's smile stiffened as he spotted where Gustav was staring at. Gustav proceeded to charge forward faster than a lot of the other planet's participants under the red group. Every of the colors were all heading towards the massive medallion from 4 different directions. Everyone, let's clear the perimeter around the medallion first before trying to capture it. Captain Austral voiced loudly from the front. You're not the boss of me. One of Planet Zillion participants yelled from the side. We're gonna need to work together if we want to win this. A participant from Planet Ruz voiced with an amicable tone. Captain Crimson, you agree with me, right? Captain Austral questioned. Yeah, it would be best we assign roles to each other. Let some of us handle defense to prevent any other colors from getting close once we start capturing the medallion. Let some be stand-ins just in case any color manages to break through and touch the medallion. They would quickly take the position of those that have gotten repelled. Let some take the role of contact, and it would be better if they had a lot of vest energy to keep going after getting repelled. Some also need to take care of defense on an aerial level. Gustav listed out formations they could take once they managed to clear the perimeter. He didn't care that Planet Draconet had previous scuffle with Earth. Right now they were on the same team, and they needed to come up with ways to succeed together. The planets under Red quickly categorized themselves in formations, deciding the land/aerial defenders, aggressors, touchers, and stand-ins based on Gustav's suggestions. However, this formation would not be met yet as the four colors clashed the moment they arrived before the medallion. Bang, bang, boom, boom. All sorts of attacks were thrown out as the colors engaged each other. The arena quickly turned to a battlefield as explosions and heavy collisions rang out repeatedly. Destruction rippled across the place as craters were left on the grounds of the arena. Powerful planets existed in other colors, as well, so Red was finding it difficult to follow the plans they agreed to. Blue is capturing the medallion. A loud automated voice reverberated across the entire arena the moment a participant in blue vest made contact with the medallion. Boom. A small explosion rang out as another colored participant touched the medallion in the next moment, causing the blue-vested participant to get sent flying thousands of feet away. Green is capturing the medallion. Boom. I think you should take a look at Snovel. Siamacronym. Red is capturing the medallion. Boom. Yellow is capturing the medallion. Explosions rang out multiple times along with different announcements as participants repeatedly got repelled after trying to capture the medallion. The medallion was very massive, so it would be difficult to prevent anyone else from touching it. At the moment, so many participants engaged each other around the medallion, which made things even more difficult. Swee-eye bang. One of the Klaxosapes swung his massive club forward, clearing a bunch of participants around the golden glowing surface of the medallion. He immediately went on to touch the medallion. Yellow is capturing the medallion. An Oxus participant in green moved to touch the medallion as well, but fly bang. A Klaxosape sent a kick at his face, causing him to spiral across the air heavily. Other Klaxosapes had also come from the side and attacked anyone that tried to get close to the medallion while it was being captured. Unfortunately, this didn't last long as a figure descended from the air. Fly-eye, one of the Klaxosapes leapt up to meet the descending female figure in red vest, but he didn't manage to cross more than a 20 feet height before. Thry. A bright purplish beam shot out from the forehead of this figure, slamming into the Klaxosape and sending him crashing into the ground below. Elevera made contact with a part of the medallion from above, and all the Klaxosapes touching it instantly got repelled. Red is capturing the medallion. She heaved a sigh of relief, but it didn't last more than a second as another participant made contact with the medallion from below. Bang! A heavy force slammed into Elevera, sending her flying in the next instant. Green is capturing the medallion. We need to regroup and stick to that formation now. Captain Austral yelled with a slightly frustrated look as she sent an opponent in blue vest flying with a fist. There are still many surrounding the medallion. Fildhor yelled with his body turning completely metallic black. Where is Gustav? E yelled as he couldn't spot Gustav around. A few moments later, a figure descended from above powerfully on the east side of the medallion where no red vest was situated. Bang! A burst of red energy blasted forth from his figure, sweeping across the vicinity heavily. Kairar! Loud and painful shrieks rang out as hundreds of participants got sent flying from this red shockwave. Gustav turned around at this point while his skin turned green and bloated. Rhea now! He yelled while stomping onto the ground. Bang! At the same instant, Rhea pushed his hand towards the ground as well. Kruowov, Ruchuchkolb, icicle-like walls instantly rose around them and the medallion, covered in liquid lava like flames and milky glow coating their tips. The walls rose to a height of more than 9,000 feet in a couple of seconds, causing the battlefield to quake greatly. It surrounded the medallion and the red-vested participants boxing them in, but they weren't the only ones within this barricade. Other participants in different colored vests were also within. Endrick, Gustav yelled. Indrik nodded and snapped his finger. Pa. An invisible barrier instantly appeared above the barricade, protecting the upper open space like a rooftop. Bang! Participants who had flight abilities and wanted to dive downwards hit the invisible barrier and were left stupefied. It's your turn now, Gustav said to who immediately understood. Pushed his fingers forward and began to conjure vortexes across the space within the barricade. The participants in other colored vests found themselves sucked into the vortexes before they could even put up a fight. Chapter 13. For the participants in other colored vests found themselves sucked into the vortexes before they could even put up a fight. Red is capturing the medallion. Wood cheers, loud cheers rang out from the spectators area that consisted of planets under the red color. Dash, Captain Crimson is amazing. Dash, he just single-handed turned the tide. Dash, at this rate we might win. Dash, let's cheer them on. The Earth spectators area, as well as others whose planet had been disqualified and had taken a liking to Gustav, could be heard talking about him in adoration. They began slowly chanting his name as they watched the challenge with looks of interest. Bang, 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 boom. The sound of explosions rang out heavily as the colors trapped on the outside of the barricade began sending forth powerful attacks. Indrik snapped his fingers a couple more times, creating more stacks of telekinetic barriers above and around the walls. He focused his energy mostly on the ones above to prevent entry. This isn't going to hold forever, Gustav announced as his body returned to normal while he headed towards the others. How long does it take to capture the medallion? Gustav inquired. One person would need 1 hour without disruption, but if more participants of the same color make contact at the same time, the process would be sped up, Ildris explained. With every added participant of the same color touching the medallion, the capture time would be cut by 5 minutes. He went on to mention that the sped-up effect only works for 2 to 10 people touching at a time. Any more than 10 didn't increase the effect. Gustav nodded in understanding as he stared at the medallion. Since they were up to 1,000 participants under the red, they undoubtedly had 10 people to spare. So, we just have to hold this for 15 minutes to win, right? Gustav voiced despite knowing the answer. Yes, Ildris responded. Boom. The space within the barricade quaked heavily as a powerful attack hit the west side of the walls. Gustav was usually confident in the durability of the Iro silk, especially now that it was combined with Rias lava fortification and atomic manipulation. However, there were 3 different colors trying to get in at the moment. 3,000 powerful participants from different planets were all attacking at the same time. It was bound to come down if he didn't do something about it. Send us out there, Gustav instructed. What? Wouldn't it be better for us to stay in here and fortify the barricade from the inside out? Planet Ruz Captain voiced with a tone of confusion. Everything will come crumbling down before we capture the medallion if we don't create a layer of defense out there. It would be better for some of us to go out there and ease the tension the barricade is currently receiving, Gustav explained. I'd rather we stay in here, Captain Austral stated. If the walls come crumbling down, we'll make sure no one touches the medallion. Planet Zillion Captain stated as well, and other planets' captain under the red color agreed. What they didn't understand was, the moment the walls came crumbling down, there was no way the capturing wouldn't be disrupted. No doubt powerful people were within the barricade, but one thing that remained obvious was the massive size of the medallion. This made it easier to make contact, but it seemed everyone else was overconfident about preventing touch if the walls came crumbling down. All right then. Send only me out there, Gustav decided. What? Just you? There are thousands of them out there, said with a troubled tone. Why don't I come with you? Ildris voiced from the side. Yes, let's come with you, added. Angie also closed in from the side. Nah, you guys stay here. It needs more sensible folks, Gustav stated. Send only me out there, Gustav added. Come on, Ma, I also have unfinished business. Chop chop, Gustav insisted. Everyone stared at each other briefly after hearing that, almost like they knew what Gustav was hinting at. We'll be better off taking care of things alone anyways. You guys just make sure no one disrupts the process inside here. Just as Gustav finished voicing out, A flash of bluish light appeared within the barricade. Two figures in yellow vests sped towards the medallion upon successfully teleporting inside the barricade. Bang! A levera descended upon the first one from above, completely leaving them incapacitated while Captain Austral grabbed the second one by the throat and flung him towards the barricade walls. 3. E quickly conjured a vortex in fear of what would happen to that participant should they make contact with the spiky lava-like walls. The participant's body phased through the vortex and they vanished. A levera grabbed the leg of the other participant and flung them in the direction of the vortex that was still open. He vanished as well, and E shut the vortex. I think you should take a look at this novel. Siamacronym, things like that will probably happen a couple more times, and they may even directly teleport in a manner that lets them make contact with the medallion the moment they appear here, Gustav referenced. You guys need to stay here and stop that from happening. It'll make it more difficult for them on the outside, Gustav added. All right then, E voiced while clasping his palms together. Swire, a vortex appeared before Gustav, and he proceeded to walk in. Dash, what is Captain Crimson doing? Dash, is he going out of the barricade? Dash, what in the world is he thinking? The spectators were astonished as they noticed Gustav's actions. The violet-colored world only lasted for a second before Gustav arrived on the other end, which of course was outside the barricade. The moment Gustav appeared on the outside, he came into contact with a flurry of attacks headed in the direction of the barricade. Blazing skyscraper-sized flames, lightning streaks, multiple colored powerful beams, and many more attacks raging at the barricade. Mini black hole has been activated. FYI, Gustav leapt into the air and spread his arms like he was going in for a hug. The moment he performed this action, multiple baby fist-sized black swirls appeared all across the air in a lined-up format. The mini black holes spread across the place and consumed the flurry of attacks heaved into the barricade from the west side. The attacks got swallowed up in a few moments, causing both participants' and spectators' faces to lit up with expressions of astonishment. For the next 14 minutes, I will be your opponent. Gustav's voice rang out powerfully and vibrantly across the entire battle arena. At first, everyone thought he must have run mad considering there were over 3,000 participants on the outside of the barricade. Planets like Osius, Diov, Indulus Prime, Claxosapes, Osiris, Orion, and so many others were at the top of the rankings. They were very powerful, yet Gustav had decided to face all of them alone. The moment Gustav whipped out the Jiko Hakai katana from his storage device, they understood that he wasn't messing around. You may be powerful, but this was a bad idea. Gustav, Captain Vilax voiced from up ahead. Maybe you're right. Gustav smiled before swinging the katana forward. A massive reddish arc with electric sparks swimming across it bloated the entire sky in the next instant, descending powerfully upon the battlefield. Take cover. One yelled as many participants chose to escape the attack while some threw out attacks to counter. It looked like the sky was getting torn apart as the arc descended and wreaked havoc upon the battlefield. Lots of participants got blasted across the place as shockwaves spread heavily. Kyre! Screams rang out as many got hit by a dose of blistering hotness and electricity at the same time. The ground split open, and the arena became fraught with even more destruction. Bang! 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 The sound of multiple collisions rang out as Gustav got engaged in mid-air by multiple participants who managed to escape the large-scale attack. FYI, his figure slipped downwards as pairs of arms reached to grab him from behind. He landed on the charred ground where another participant was already swinging a massive white, circular glowing blade at him. Dash has been activated. Roelfindi Alphas Nu Omicron V Epsilon L Omicron M swoosh. Gustav swerved sideways, dodging the swing before sending a fist towards the back of the participant. Bang! Gustav proceeded to keep the Jiko Hakai katana away after his fist connected and leapt upwards once more. His arms turned into after images as he swung them forward in every direction. Bang! 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 It was like his fists slammed into all 6 participants surrounding him in mid-air at the same time as they all got sent flying in different directions with their backs caving in. Gustav moved to the left, dodging an insect-like arm that swept past his face from behind in the next instant. "Sorry," Gustav voiced before grabbing the arm and spinning. Whoosh, he flung the Ozius participant towards the ground in the next instant, causing their body to create a mini crater from the impact. Bang! We will be arriving at the first chapter scene after this. Thanks to everyone who made it this far. Chapter 1305. They know 1305. They know as Captain Strum felt like he was hit by a moving orbital body as two of his arms uprooted from his body after receiving the fist from Gustav. Blood jetted out like a fountain as he slammed into the far end of the barrier, breaking straight through all the layers and continuously shooting out into space. FYI, Gustav's figure vanished, and he reappeared in space hundreds of feet before Captain Strum's body, which was still shooting forward. He gathered energy in his right arm as he arched it backwards while clenching his fist tightly. His fist was coated in a golden and pinkish glow as he drove it forward at Captain Strum's approaching body. Boom! Space parted as Gustav's fist sent ripples across the endless expanse of darkness the moment it collided with Captain Strum. Bang! 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 THRE. Stars in the distance got snuffed out from the destructive wave of energy that spread forth from Gustav's fist as Captain Strum shot downwards like a dying star. His body shot across the solar system as it descended towards the ninth disk. All of his limbs uprooted from his body as he fell unconscious even before he hit the battle stage. Boom! The battle stage got blasted to smithereens the moment Captain Strum came into contact with it, sending another wave of destructive ripples across the vicinity. Fly! Gustav reappeared in the stage at this moment as time came to a standstill again. He deactivated cosmic superiority at this point to make sure it wouldn't be active when time went back to normal. The glow emitted from Encore slowly whit-led as its figure began to disintegrate. Time stopped reversing, and everything that seemed to be in an illusionary state started solidifying. Strum had reversed time to the point where he just activated the full power of his Encore and was tossing Gustav around like a dirt bag. As time went back to normal functionality, the scene that the spectators would be witnessing was Gustav getting beat up. However, the moment time resumed, the entire stage suddenly appeared destroyed and the scene the spectators were initially witnessing glitched like a video game playback. The spectators were completely astonished as they stared at the disgraded stage. One unconscious figure was completely laid on the ground with missing limbs, while another was standing before the unconscious one with an unbothered expression. What the hell just happened? Captain Crimson was taking a beating, and all of a sudden, Captain Strum is defeated? He looks bloodied and battered too. His Encore is gone too? This doesn't make any sense. How did this happen? The spectators were in an utter state of confusion, not recalling the events that played out after this point of the battle. Only a few spectators like the Council Lords and Miss stared at the stage with looks of understanding, but they still remained astonished. The kid has truly grown more powerful than I realize. Miss Amy muttered. Young Miss, I sense time manipulation on a higher scale. What did we miss? Grand Commander questioned from the side. You didn't see it? Miss Amy asked with a slightly surprised tone. Grand Commander Cheyenne was an alpha, so she had expected that even if he couldn't be completely immune to time-related abilities, he would at least be able to perceive the events ongoing during time manipulation and have memories of the original timeline. I can only faintly sense that time has been altered on a large scale, but I have no recollection of how things exactly went, Grand Commander Cheyenne responded. Maybe this is a good thing. They will remain unaware that Gustav is a cosmic superior being. Miss Amy was still surprised that someone as young as Strum was able to pull this off with an alpha lacking memories of the original timeline, but she decided to use this to Gustav's advantage. She proceeded to narrate to Grand Commander Cheyenne the events that played out, while skipping the mention of Gustav's use of cosmic superiority. She didn't give him any explanation as to how Gustav was immune to time manipulation, which made the Grand Commander even more confused, but Miss Amy would rather leave him in confusion than let the Earth be aware of Gustav's cosmic superiority until the kid was ready to reveal it himself. Strum lost? But how? The Earth's captain seems to have broken out of his time manipulation. But how is this even possible? The Draconid spectators area was in shambles as well. Bronze immediately clenched her fist so tightly a popping sound rang out. Even after everything he still lost, she voiced with a chilly tone. That kid, the Earth's captain, he is a cosmic superior being. Anyone would have lost. The other's prestigious-looking fellow beside Bronze immediately voiced out. Why did you stop me from interfering? No one would have noticed if I did. She turned to stare at the Draken beside her with a look of anguish. It was a battle between the two youngsters. Oldies like us are not meant to interfere. It would be a disgrace to our great planet if we were to interfere in such matters, the Draken voiced with a dismissive tone. Also, we are not the only ones who are aware of what went down. Another male Draken voiced from the side while staring in the direction of Earth's spectators area. Bronze immediately gnashed her teeth while peering forward with a look of hatred. How dare that Earthling do this to my son, Gustav Crimson, Planet Earth, wins, squinting eyes face, 1,200 points attained. Amidst the confused gazes of the millions of spectators, Gustav exited the stage and walked towards the Earth's participants area. Don't get me wrong. I'm glad Captain Crimson won, but what the fuck just happened? Beats me. I don't understand a thing. Even the Earth spectators area was full of confused people. Gustav's fellow team members were not left out of this confusion. Why, what did you do, Gus? EE questioned the moment Gustav arrived before them. Long story, you all just can't remember because of strum time-related abilities. Gustav heaved a sigh of fatigue as he took a seat. He had expended a lot of energy to win that battle and almost depleted his Yarki in the process. Yarki would have been long depleted if it wasn't mixed with the other ability Gustav unlocked after becoming a parallel being. Good job, big brother, Endrik voiced from the side. You saw it? Gustav questioned but instantly arrived at the answer before Endrik responded. Time candidate perks? Gustav voiced. Endrik's mouth hung loosely for a bit before he answered. Yes. Oh? Endrik knows what happened. Endrik, tell us we're confused. Spit it out, man. The group quickly clustered around Endrik, who eventually decided to give them a brief analysis of what happened while leaving a lot of parts out. The versus battle challenge continued while the spectators still couldn't get Gustav and Strum's battle out of their heads and kept trying to find answers as to what happened. Big brother, I noticed something. Endrik approached Gustav. What is it? Gustav questioned. They witnessed it too, Endrik answered. By they, do you mean? Gustav glanced at Endrik with an expression of concern. Endrik nodded in response despite the fact that Gustav didn't complete his question. They're not supposed to be able to. This might be a problem. Gustavs caressed his chin with a contemplative expression as he muttered. Did you uncover anything about them last night? Gustav asked. Not yet. I'm still looking. Endrik stuttered a little before responding. You figured something out, didn't you? Gustav's tone instantly turned suspicious. I really am still looking into it. I have pieced what I saw together yet, and no, you can't help me do that. I have to confirm if I'm looking in the right direction first, so I don't mince information, Endrik answered with a sincere tone. All right, do let me know when you figured it out, Gustav stated while turning to stare in the direction of Indulus Prime participants. Indulus Prime participants stood together in place with their pitch-black eyes on display as usual. Their expression remained unknown due to the wraps of bandage-like clothing covering the entirety of their figures. 100% confirmed, one of them voiced out. It was just as I suspected, Captain Iron voiced with a tone of anticipation. We have finally uncovered the outworldly. While they exchanged a few words over there, Endrik stood in place with a disturbed expression on his face as his forehead glowed with green light. You told me everything was okay. How could this be? Endrik yelled internally. No, I told you that going on that mission would increase the chances of averting great calamity in his future, which was correct, Husarius answered. Then what the hell did I see last night? Endrik asked. A better future compared to how things would have gone if you didn't act at all, Husarius replied. You are crazy. You are crazy if you think I am going to let that happen. Follow current novels on Top Novel Fool. Calm. Chapter 1306's before this arc could completely decimate the battlefield again. Captain Vilax appeared before the rest of it. Bang! He placed both arms before the massive red arc and dark arrows began to appear all across it. Vilax is going to be a problem, Gustav muttered the moment he noticed the arc had been stopped. Vilax slowly joined his hands together, and upon performing that action, the massive red arc of destruction shrunk. I do not need to inform you that your days are numbered. Captain Irond appeared behind Gustav in mid-air, like a puff of black cloud. Swee-eye, Captain Irond reached out to grab Gustav and held him in place. No, Gustav voiced while Vilax pushed his hands forward. Fwye-eye, the reddish arc went sent back in Gustav's direction, increasing immensely as it shot towards him. But yours are. Gustav grabbed Captain Irond's arms while increasing in size and proceeded to fling him in the direction of the oncoming massive reddish arc. Bam! Gustav landed on the ground and dashed towards the left while the arc rammed into Captain Irond's figure, sending him flying across the battlefield. Bang! The reddish arc of destruction vigorously slammed into the barrier Gustav and Rhea constructed around the medallion, causing it to quake. Gustav, on the other hand, charged towards the participants the moment he landed while conjuring massive red sickles. The captain of the Gundabolts was holding onto some greenish ribbon-like weapon, which she swung towards Gustav the moment he arrived before her. Gustav grabbed one of the massive red sickles in mid-air and hacked down at her figure. Swyish, the ribbon collided with the first red sickle and turned greenish before sending off a powerful explosion. Gustav had vanished and reappeared behind one of her subordinate. Slash, he slashed at the back of this Gundabolt with another sickle, spilling blood on the battlefield. Gustav had gotten surrounded in just a moment again, as many of the captains tried dealing with him. The red sickles floating in mid-air swung around him, slashing at their figures very quickly. It looked like a blur of reddish blades whirring around Gustav's figure like chopper blades edgy this moment, only faster and more powerful. Bam, 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 bam. Lightning Blitz has been activated. His figure turned into a lightning streak before he was caught in an inescapable entrapment, and he reappeared on the other side of the barrier. He is too fast. We need to find a way to trap him, the captains voiced with looks of frustration. No, we need to destroy the barrier. That's the only reason he is out here. To deter us, Captain Vilax yelled. It seemed like the western part of the barricade got a little breathing space after Gustav appeared on the other end. The other end had been raining attacks on the barricade when Gustav was busy dealing with the other side. With his sudden rampage, he had truly taken a huge load off the barricade. However, Gustav was still one person going against 3,000 participants. He couldn't deal with every single one of them at the same time. About 8 minutes had passed since he started his rampage, and he had successfully put many of them out of commission, but it still wasn't enough, especially since he avoided the much stronger opponents to deal with weaker ones first. It's Captain Crimson, one of them yelled the moment Gustav appeared on the other side. Gustav had become a wild force to reckon with since this challenge began, and the participants understood what his appearance meant. Fwoosh, Gustav's figure blurred, and he reappeared before an Oxlurkic who had the hole in his chest gleaming with a dangerous scarlet light. Gustav grabbed the Oxlurkic before he could react and lifted him slightly before turning him around. Through him, a powerful scarlet beam shot out from the Oxlurkic chest, blasting multiple participants away upon collision. Kyrer. Arf! Screams rang out as some participants lost their limbs from this attack, but Gustav wasn't done. He proceeded to charge at the hundreds of participants up ahead, turning the Oxlurkic in his grasp to a weapon. Bang! 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 I think you should take a look at Snovel. Kmi swung the entire Oxlurkic's body like it weighed nothing, slamming him into tens of participants in less than a second. Attacks approached him from behind, which he managed to evade. Gustav leapt into the air once more as his skin turned dark. His face transformed, taking the form of a dark bunny with massive horns and purplish, terrifying, glowing eyes. Kyr! Gustav opened his mouth and sonic waves shot out of them, decimating this part of the battlefield. Many participants closed their ears in pain while bleeding profusely from different orifices of their bodies. The sonic scream didn't just affect them physically. To them it felt like their internal organs were turning to mush. What the hell? Just how many supernatural abilities does he possess? He's a monster. The participants that were still active stared at Gustav's figure above in disbelief. Gustav just kept using abilities upon abilities. It almost felt like their numbers were useless against him. It had been 10 minutes since he came out here, and in that short time frame, he had taken out around 2,000 participants, single-handedly. This wasn't to say he hadn't taken any damage, but Gustav was moving so fast and precise that it made it difficult for anyone to successfully land a hit on him. Even the fastest species had been unsuccessful because it seemed like Gustav was able to predict their movements. They were very fast, but they couldn't fly, so catching up to Gustav was impossible for them. Flyei, Gustav descended with speed, while conjuring an atomic blade. Before the participants could recover completely from the sonic waves, the atomic blade swept across the air. Chapter 1307 Medallion Challenge comes to an unexpected finish. He immediately spotted a figure up hundreds of feet up ahead in green vest who was inches away from making contact with a piece of the medallion. Gustav was no doubt very quick, but there was no way he would get to this participant before they made contact with the medallion. It was literally right before them. One could say they already made contact. Swoosh, just when the hand was only half an inch from making contact, a silver streak collided with the figure in green vest. Bang! The participant was sent hurling across the air while the silver streak materialized atop the medallion. Angie! Gustav heaved a sigh of relief as he trotted forward. Fleisch! He grabbed a Klaxosape from behind his head and pushed him into the ground. Bang! At this moment, Captain Vilax and Austral were in a battle with each other. Both sides seemed to be evenly matched, but Captain Austral had managed to keep Captain Vilax away from the medallion. However, Captain Vilax wasn't the only captain here. Captains from other planets were engaging the others. Fortunately, Gustav had really managed to take out more than half of the opposing participants earlier, so only around 500 had made it through the hole created on the barricade. The Reds still had 1,000 participants on their side, so the opposition was currently outnumbered. Forhush, Gustav went through the hole and stamped his foot on the ground. Bang! Iro's silk arose from the broken-down part of the barricade and immediately covered it before more participants could get through. He stamped his foot again and more Iro silks shot out of the ground, covering the entirety of the barricade like a second layer of defense. Rhea! Gustav yelled. Unfortunately, Rhea seemed to be engaging a couple of participants at the moment. He turned the ground around him to a sinking lava terrain, causing the participants to shriek in pain as their legs got flamed. Covering his entire body in dark rocks, he looked like a humanoid monster as he charged at the participants, landing heavy hits on them. Swoosh! Gustav arrived before him like a phantom. Go fortify that place. Leave this to me, Gustav voiced. Rhea nodded before turning to head towards the barricade. While Rhea was adding his layer of defense around the barricade, Gustav dealt with the participants on this side very swiftly. He had conjured tins of vortexes all around the medallion with immense suction forces. Anyone that got close to it would be sucked into the vortexes and arrive on the outskirts of the barricade. Gustav was grabbing as many participants as he could and hurling them at the vortexes. In about a minute, only around 10 participants with different vest colors were left. These 10 participants were all captains, and they were currently outnumbered despite their strength. All we need to do is touch it, and from there we can figure out the rest. Captain Vilax had a frustrated look as he and the rest of the captains made an encirclement with their backs touching. What is the medallion made of? The Orion captain questioned. Different materials, but mostly stretnum. What are you thinking? Captain Vilax inquired. I'm thinking we don't have to touch the medallion to separate the Reds from it. The moment Orion captain voiced this out, he grabbed the halo floating above his head. Phewie! He flung it upwards. At this moment, only around 20 seconds were left before the medallion would be successfully captured. The halo arrived about 300 feet above the medallion and Gustav suddenly appeared beside it. Not on my watch, he muttered while reaching out to slap the glowing circular object away. The moment Gustav had came into contact with it, he suddenly found himself stuck. Huh. He let out a surprised exclamation as the halo suddenly emitted a burst of bright glow and multiplied. Thang, 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 thang. Tens of halos appeared underneath the one Gustav got stuck to, all under the umbrella of a penetrative pillar of fluorescent-colored light. The pillar of light emitted from the multiple halos descended upon the medallion below, and an unexpected event occurred. Bang! A powerful charge blasted forth from the medallion, sending every single participant around it flying. Everyone making contact with the medallion was also sent flying at the same moment the charge blasted forth. Yes, we did it, Orion Captain and the others voiced with looks of triumph. Although they had not managed to start capturing the medallion, they were glad the first step had been taken. Had Red managed to hold for the next 20 seconds, all would have been lost. At the very least, they had more time to break down the barricade and capture the medallion for their various colors, or so they thought. Hold on. The screens. Captain Vilax voiced while pointing at one of the screen above. Red is capturing the medallion. 15 seconds, 14 seconds, 13 seconds. What the hell? How? It should have stopped and started afresh even if a person just touched it. Orion Captain voiced with a look of disbelief. Look, there's a hand. Gundabalt Captain said while pointing at a part of the medallion. It was barely visible due to the angle where it made contact, but the captains managed to trace it out and noticed it came from above. Not him again. Captain Crimson? Their eyes were shot looks of astonishment and disbelief as they looked upwards. Gustav had one of his arm extended from above, making contact with the medallion. It turned out that when Gustav got stuck after making contact with the halo, he moved all of his abilities towards the left side of his body. After regaining control there, his first thought was to activate size manipulation. He extended his arm downwards to touch the medallion at the same moment the charge blasted forth. Gustav's hands were touching the medallion before everyone got blasted away from it. This also meant that Red never stopped touching the medallion. The 10 captains who were initially getting engaged had more to worry about as they got instantly crowded. Bang, 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 bang. Under the pressure of the hundreds of angry participants under the red color, they got grounded and took tons of damages. About a minute later, the screens all displayed one thing. Red has captured the medallion. Cheers, cheers, cheers. Loud cheers rang out across the arena. The spectators spat excited remarks about this challenge that had lasted less than 30 minutes. It was the shortest major challenge since ISOP began, but it had been extremely captivating and exciting. Gustav was the highlight of today's challenge. The spectators couldn't stop talking about him and the craziness he showed today, taking on 3,000 participants all by himself. The two most asked questions about Gustav after the challenge ended were, how many supernatural abilities does he possess? Can he take other people's supernatural abilities? The participants from other colors were at a loss and displayed gloomy expressions when it was time to leave the arena after disqualification. All of a sudden, the handlers and a couple of MBO officers descended upon the arena with Miss Amy. Bam, 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 bam. The spectators and participants were all surprised when they saw the newly arrived group surround Indulus Prime members. You are coming with us, one of the handlers voiced to the captain. Why? Captain Irond questioned with his dark eyes deepening with shoddiness. Vikrashinsa, Miss Amy stated. Captain Irond's eyes widened slightly the moment he heard that, and he turned to stare at Gustav, who stood up ahead with folded arms. Suddenly, push, all Indulus Prime members dashed in different directions in a bid to escape the encirclement. Bind high. Before the handler could complete his sentence, Twish, a cage appeared in their midst, and within this cage was every single one of the Indulus Prime members. There you go, Miss Amy voiced. The handler's jaws nearly dropped upon witnessing this. Miss Amy had captured every single one of them before the handlers moved. She had been so fast that they didn't even witness her perform this action. She was done before they could act. Ahem, yes, take them away, the handler with the highest authority commanded. The handlers wasted no time taking the Indulus Prime participants away, leaving the entire audience in confusion. They soon noticed that the Indulus Prime spectators area was void of any Indulus Prime species as well. What is going on? A lot of them had this question on their minds and even voiced it out, but only Gustav knew what this was, especially since they were taken because of him. Gustav, you should come too, Miss Amy said before flying after them. Gustav nodded before turning around to face his teammates. What is that all about? Angie asked. What I've been spending time investigating, and the reason I got here late today. Gustav's last sentence hinted at the rift that appeared above the arena. Tier 1 privilege is now available for purchase. Follow current novels on Top Novel Fool. Com. Chapter 1308. I am the outworldly. What I've been spending time investigating, and the reason I got here late today. Gustav's last sentence hinted at the rift that appeared above the arena. Everyone was curious about what happened, especially since Gustav couldn't be found on the planet. They were even more curious now since they could see that it was related to Indulus Prime. I'll tell you guys all about it when I get back, Gustav said to them before ascending into the air. Thuum, he disappeared into the distance in the next moment, leaving everyone else to deal with the press and reporters ready to question the winners of today's challenge. As expected, Earth representatives and other planets' representatives who were all under the red color had been surrounded by reporters and cameras. Dash, how do you feel after winning? Dash, did you know that Captain Crimson was capable of stealing supernatural abilities? Dash, is this performance to be expected at the final challenge? Dash, what are Earth's chances of winning ISOP? The reporters threw out questions in quick successions. Handler 1 didn't address the arena after the challenge ended, unlike how it would usually be today. Everyone felt this must be due to the fact that the next challenge would also be the final challenge. Maybe the handlers were choosing to not say anything for now to increase the suspense. The spectators on and outside of Planet Ozius, as well as the participants, were extremely excited for what is to come. ISOP had began with nearly 3,000 planets, but would be ending with only 50. 1,000 participants representing 50 different planets would be participating in the final challenge that would determine the champion of this ISOP edition. Nightfall soon arrived and Gustav sat in the main room of the Earth's accommodation quarters with the others. Everyone sat still and stared at him with attentive expressions. So, you were gone for the entire night because you infiltrated Indulus Prime accommodation area? E asked with a look of dumbfoundment. Yes, Gustav answered. Why did you do that? Matilda inquired from the side. You did mention that it was the reason you got to the challenge late, Angie said with an expression of curiosity. Indeed, let me tell you guys about how this all started. Gustav went on to narrate how he started suspecting that Indulus Prime members were up to no good since Falco's situation began. He explained that he had been on them for over a month and spent a lot of nights out spying on them. Of course, he made sure they were never aware of this. The Indulus Prime spectators are all puppets. They're not real living beings, Gustav revealed. What? How is that possible? Fildhor asked with a look of disbelief. We'll get to how they pulled that off. Gustav responded before resuming his narration. He went on to mention how he suspected they might also be linked to Falco due to the similar dark abilities, and also suspected that they had ulterior motives since they weren't participating in ISOP to win. He finally got to the part where, after weeks of planning and getting a few tips from Indrik about their movement, he infiltrated their accommodation area. Their accommodation area happened to be a dark dimension that existed outside of Planet Ozius, which was also why no one was able to sense his presence on the planet. The darkness eats at your sense of direction and is also a space that repels living creatures. It expands to the wish of the owner, who happens to be Captain Irond, or should I say Vikrushinsa. Gustav's narration would occasionally cause their face to twitch in disbelief and discombobulation. It turns out that Falco is some sort of successor in where they originally come from. Gustav had a troubled look upon getting to this part. Successor? Successor of what? Eldris and EE questioned at the same time. I know this is going to be hard to believe, but Falco is not from here. Gustav revealed. Not from here? Is he an alien? How does he have a bloodline then? Matilda and Angie inquired in successions. He was no doubt born on Earth, or at least I think he was. However, his true identity is something different. He is not an alien, but HR is not of Earth either. He is to succeed a person Captain Iron and the others refer to as the Lord. Gustav gave a brief explanation. I don't understand. How can he not be an alien if he is not from here? E asked once again. I can't explain it either. I didn't get more information. All I know is Captain Iron is from wherever Falco true origins with the crown lies. I heard them speak about taking him back after achieving their true objective for sending Captain Iron here. They are aware of what he is currently experiencing, Gustav voiced lengthily. If Falco isn't their true objective, then what is? Ildris questioned with a calm but curious tone. Me, Gustav revealed. Huh, why would they be after you? Angie questioned with a worried tone. Because I am the outworldly. They are after the outworldly, and once they found out it was me, they began to make preparations according to their original plans, Gustav answered. Outworldly? What the hell is that? E's face lit up with confusion. All I can say about that is, it's some kind of title which threatens their existence. Gustav replied. So they sent them here to get rid of you? Ildris asked. Something like that. Also, it's not of them. It's a single person, Gustav pointed out. What do you mean? Matilda's eyebrows furrowed. Indulus Prime members consist of just a single person. Captain Iron. The others had never looked so confused before. Hearing Gustav say this made no sense to them until his next sentence. All other 19 Indulus Prime participants are clones of Captain Iron. What? That is insane. I think my brain is falling apart cause I can't wrap my damn head around this. Angie, Matilda, and EE voiced one after the other. Gustav went on to narrate how he discovered this last night, since he took the form of one of the clones without realizing it was a clone. The one known as Prime Vessel G had given it away. He was uncovered very quickly even though he did manage to get some information. The group now understood that they didn't know Gustav was in their midst at first, and even after figuring out that there was an infiltration, they still had no idea it was Gustav due to his shape-shifting. Gustav got to the part where he struggled to escape the dark dimension after getting discovered, and how he stole memories from one of the clones which in turn helped him in discovering more about their plans. The real Indulus Prime species were wiped out, Gustav revealed. They wiped out the whole planet, just so they could put puppets in place and successfully participate in ISOP to get to me. The plan was to open a small gateway to their dimension that would suck out my essence as the outworldly, so I would no longer be a threat to them. They needed to identify first before they could put their plans in place. Gustav went on to mention the symbols they had drawn all across the arena. The group was still in shock as to how this whole thing was plotted under the nose of the Alliance and almost successfully orchestrated. These people had really come close to pulling it off. If Gustav was unable to find his way out of that dimension, who knows what would have happened? So who exactly are they? Angie asked. They call themselves Vessels. Captain Iron, whose real name is Vikrush Insa, answers to someone known as Prime Vessel G. There must be a hierarchy of sorts where they all answer to the one they call the Lord, who might also be Falco's true father. According to the memories, that person they call the Lord has somehow tampered with this dimension. Gustav had a look of contemplation as he voiced out. Everything wasn't clear to him either, but one thing he knew was, only the system and Husarius were aware of him being the outworldly. For beings from another dimension to be aware of that term, it could only mean one thing: they were linked to whatever was coming. Maybe it had to do with their Lord. I have to question them personally, Gustav decided. Don't. The more you know, the faster it approaches, the system voiced internally. What? So I was right. They are linked to it. Why didn't you tell me? Gustav questioned internally. You were supposed to discover it yourself, hence the 2 weeks quest, the system responded. Gustav recalled the quest which he did completed successfully, but hadn't checked his rewards yet. That is as much information as you were supposed to know, for now, the system added. No. I want to know more, like why Falco is linked to them. Don't do anything stupid. Follow current novels on Top Novel Fool. Calm. Chapter 1309. Don't do anything stupid. Watch him. Man, I am still so confused about this whole thing. Like, what the hell is an outworldly? Why is Falco involved? How the fuck is he not of Earth, but also not an alien? If these niggas are from another dimension, then what is their business with ours? How are you a threat to them? My brain's about to melt like jelly. He looked like smoke was about to evaporate from his head. Everyone had the same question in mind and turned to face Gustav, hoping he would answer all of them. I don't know what to tell you guys. All I can say is, these people don't have good intentions for us, and our universe would face peril if they were to successfully get rid of me now, Gustav said while shaking his head slightly. He also had a lot that he wanted to figure out, but unfortunately, this was the amount of information he currently had. The group continued discussing till midnight before they decided to retire for the rest of the night. Gustav had told them everything he knew, but of course there was still a lot of confusion and speculations. Gustav couldn't decide whether or not to listen to the system. It was currently taking everything in him, not to head to where Captain Iron and his clones were currently held to question them. Gustav sat on his bed and stared at the system notifications before him. Quest successful. Uncover what the Indulus Prime participants are up to. Rewards. Plus 10 million EXP. Atomic Manipulation Bloodline has been upgraded to Grade A. Squinting Eyes Face. Plus 200 Charm. Not bad, but charm seems like a waste, Gustav voiced while standing to his feet. He moved towards the spot with a mirror and checked his face. There were visible changes to his looks. Gustav's jawline looked a lot more chiseled and well-defined than before. To add to this, his skin was so smooth and milky-looking. One could mistake it for that of a female if they touched him. He was starting to look a little feminine, with very attractive lips and streamlined nose abridged his face. His eyes still remained deep and cold, but he was a whole level more attractive than he was before. Gustav would most certainly be mistaken for a model celebrity if he walked into somewhere with his current looks. Being a male prostitute would suit you, the system voiced. I have more things to worry about right now than prostitution, Gustav stated in response before walking away from the mirror. Why do you think charm is useless? It could help you in unexpected situations, the system questioned. It's not like other planets' standards of beauty are the same. I may look good to an Earthling but look ugly to a Klaxosape, not in this case. You will look good to any species because charm is a universal stats, the system responded. Can it help me save Falco? Or bring Timmy back? Gustav asked. No? Then it is useless, Gustav added before taking a seat. How long till disqualified planets begin leaving? Gustav asked after a brief silence. Some leave immediately, some are waiting till ISOP ends, but I know why you're asking, the system replied. They're still undergoing medical procedures, so they will be here for a while, the system added. Good, now the games can begin, Gustav muttered with a cold tone. The night went by very quickly and the next morning arrived. Everyone still discussed how the last major challenge went. Earth and Gustav remained one of the major debates amongst these discussions. I think you should take a look at Snovel. Some were wary of Gustav at this point and wondered if it was okay for someone who could take others' supernatural ability to be allowed free will and movement. They didn't know if this power affected aliens or was only capable of affecting mixed bloods, but they were still concerned. Others could care less and only spoke of Gustav's reverence. A lot of them who were aliens had developed a great amount of liking and respect for him. Stories about him began to spread everywhere. His accomplishments as an MBO officer even before ISOP began. Rumors about him being a cosmic superior being had also started escalating. Cosmic superior beings were extremely rare, to the point that the last time anyone ran into one was over 200 years ago. It was unknown how many cosmic superior beings existed at the moment, but it was estimated that there might not be more than 10 of them in this vast universe. A new cosmic superior being was unlikely. But based on everything Gustav had done so far, a lot of people believed the rumors. This was happening despite the fact that Gustav had used Yarki at a moment where time was being manipulated. No one except people like Miss Amy should have been able to witness him use it, and yet the rumors had spread. Still, there was a lot of back and forth, especially with many people saying, if he was a cosmic superior being, he wouldn't even need to fight. There was no doubt that Gustav and the Earth would be a topic of debate for the next couple of days unless something else arose. In an ISOP medical center, a group of 5 people laid on a bed of sorts. These 5 were positioned close to one another, as they seemed to be suffering from the same ailment. They had wrinkly, transparent skins and very thin figures. Their limbs were bent like they were elastic due to how extremely thin they were. It seemed like they were very old beings. Technological medical equipments were strapped to their bodies, seemingly preventing them from kicking the bucket. An Ozus in red medical outfit walked in and began examining these beings one after the other. It seemed to be a female Ozus. She spoke to them one after the other with a kind tone, asking how they feel and generally showing concern. They answered one after the other, and she did her examinations till she arrived at the last one on the far left end. "How are you feeling? Much better?" she questioned. "I am trying, doctor. My back aches and I feel joint pains," the wrinkly being answered feebly. "Sorry about that. I will administer a drug that will ease your pains," she said while whipping out a massive tool that looked like a syringe. "Thank you, doctor." The moment he uttered these words, he suddenly felt a small sting. "Doctor?" he voiced weakly while looking up at the doctor, who displayed a sinister smile after stabbing the syringe-like tool into his wrinkly arm. He caught a glimpse of the purplish liquid the tool held before it completely penetrated his body. "It hurts." It was at this point he realized that this wasn't the doctor. A sharp pain assaulted his senses as he felt a burning sensation spread across his body. "Erf!" he yelled in pain while the doctor quickly covered his mouth. "Wobble her." His entire body shook as he experienced pain unlike anything he ever felt before. "I told you I'd make you suffer, hee," the doctor whispered in his ear while covering his mouth. His joints were flaming, his skin felt like it was getting sliced through, and pepper was being added. It seemed like hot rod was moving through his belly, and ultimately the feeling of all sorts of pain interlined. "This is just the start. I will come every day, watch out. I could be your doctor, your teammate, your brother, your father, or even your uncle. I could be anyone, so make sure you fear the approach of any soul regardless of who it might be. Remember today and cry in dread any time a person gets close to you. I am everywhere." The moment the doctor finished saying this, she let go of the sickly being who kept trembling intensely in pain and fear. "Earth!" Orimon yelled in pain once more, but the doctor turned invisible and completely vanished before anyone could come check on them. "Earth! It burns! It burns!" He kept yelling while the real medical officials trotted into the room with expressions of worry. "You sure are having fun," the system voiced in Gustav's mind after he reappeared within his room. "Only fair to make him suffer enough before sending him to join Teamy." "A good tribute too," Gustav responded while his figure transformed from an Ozus into his original look. "Well, it does seem like there is no point in trying to win the case anymore since they already got disqualified," the system voiced with a tone of understanding. It was indeed as the system said. The Zionsis got disqualified along with every other planet under a different color than red. Now that they were disqualified, Earth could no longer take up the case of trying to prove that the murder had been intentional and not accidental. The point of all that was to get them disqualified in the first place, and now they were. Chapter 13:10 Merging Bloodlines. The point of all that was to get them disqualified in the first place, and now they were. Now Gustav had decided it was time for him to take matters into his own hands. Orimon's chapter of suffering had began today. To Gustav, it was fortunate that the Zionsis hadn't left yet, since the teammates were still receiving treatment. He had decided that whenever they were ready to leave, he would put Orimon out of his misery. The next day, Gustav visited the medical area for participants as a Zionsi higher-up. Orimon had been placed in a secluded location different from the others since the medical personnel believed he was becoming deranged. Orimon had been screaming and crying about being in pain. They wanted to check him, and he wouldn't let anyone near him. He kept yelling for everyone to stay away from him. By the time they were able to hold him down and scan his body for any abnormalities, they didn't notice anything. This was because Gustav had made use of a drug that erases traces of itself very quickly. Had they examined Orimon immediately, they would have discovered it. Since Orimon prevented anyone from getting close at first, he gave the drug enough time to erase its traces from his system. Gustav, of course, was allowed to see Orimon since he was a Zionsi higher-up, or so they thought. Orimon had been pumped full of sedatives, so he was currently asleep. This made approach even easier. A grin appeared on Gustav's face as he reached to his storage space to take out another massive syringe-like object. Wakey wakey, it's time for a new dose of aches, Gustav voiced with a calm tone while stabbing the tool into Orimon's neck. Orimon's eyes sprang open instantly. Key. Before he could yell, Gustav's hands already covered his mouth. Low, muffled noises were heard as Orimon's pupils dilated in immense pain. His scrawny feet trashed around as his body vibrated in immense pain. Remember what I told you. Your suffering just began. I am everywhere. I am everyone. I am inevitable, Gustav whispered in his ears gently. It was like the devil was here in human flesh as Gustav smirked joyously while Orimon trembled in immense pain and fear. Gustav was waiting for the drug to erase every traces of itself in Orimon's system before he decided to let go of him. Orimon began screaming out and gurgling in pain while Gustav quickly moved out to call the medical personnel. He pretended that Orimon had just suddenly began screaming and pointing at him, which was exactly what he did when Gustav came back with the medical personnel. Gus, Tav Crim. Son. Yo, you six. Lou, evil. Me. Orimon yelled in pain and craziness, while the medical personnel held him down and began administering sedatives again. I didn't know it was this bad, Gustav stated with a voice that didn't belong to him. He pretended to be very concerned as he watched the medical personnel's work. They were even more concerned at this point, and sure that Orimon wasn't okay in the head. Unfortunately for Orimon, despite the sedatives that were administered, the pain never subsided. Even while he was unconscious, he still felt the intense pain in his subconscious. He was utterly suffering. Gustav left a little later without anyone being aware that he was a perpetrator. This was day 2 of torturing Orimon with a non-lethal toxin he crested from the tail of a mixed-breed scorpion. Gustav had a lot of things in his storage device, some of which he had never used. He had created this toxin about 2 years ago with a poisonous tail he acquired after killing a mixed breed. He made it non-lethal, but the toxin was capable of inducing the worst kind of pain to a living creature. He never saw the need for it until now. Another 2 days went by, and it was non-stop hell for Orimon. From doctor to Zionsi higher up to teammate to infiltrating with invisibility. Gustav was making sure Orimon suffered greatly. The Zionsis that aged from his attack were strapped to machines that were supposed to help them regain vitality. Unfortunately, Orimon looked like he was going crazy and always destroyed everything around him, so they had to keep him in a locked, empty medical room. The Zionsis were preparing to leave planet Ozius at this point since Orimon would not stop begging and crying for forgiveness. He said that whenever he closed his eyes, Gustav was there. Whenever he opened them, he was there. He couldn't sleep, he couldn't eat, he couldn't let anyone get close to him. He was slowly descending into depravity and begging for his existence to be snuffed out. Currently, Gustav sat in his room staring at a panel. Do you think it's a good idea? He asked out loud. It only says merge because they're halves of a single bloodline, the system replied. Anytime there's anything related to a bloodline merge, it becomes something different. 99% of the times, Gustav said with furrowed eyebrows. This isn't combination. These are 2 same bloodlines, the system voiced in response. All right then, maybe you'll just merge them. Gustav was unaware of the fact that Glade and Timi's bloodlines were like sides of the same coin. Do you wish to merge bloodlines? Crimson matter plus crimson matter. Yes/no. Merge, Gustav voiced. Merging bloodlines. 0/100%. Gustav stared at the merging process with a slightly keen expression before taking his focus off. This would probably take a day, he muttered before getting to his feet. He turned towards his room door and proceeded to head out. The moment he arrived in the main room, there was a knock at the door. It's open, Gustav voiced while EE and Angie stared at the entrance wondering who was there. In the next moment, Miss Amy walked in with a man. This man happened to be clad in dark hat, sleeveless tight black shirt, and red leather pants.